they can call 800-838-6331 or contact Stephanie Coppolino, Women Veterans Program Manager, at 781-687-3426. Rare sight. Red Sox lose to Orioles. Baltimore. Tim Beckham and Jonathan Shoup homered and drove in 3-run each, and the Baltimore Orioles withstood 4 long balls by the Boston Red Sox in a 7-6 victory Tuesday night. It was only the 3rd loss in 18 games for the Red Sox, who have the best record in the major leagues, and a 5-game lead over the New York Yankees in the AL East. Baltimore closer Zach Britton was not used in a save situation. A person familiar with the talks told the Associated Press the Yankees are close to agreement on a trade to acquire Britton for 3 prospects. The person spoke on condition of anonymity because the deal would be subject to the teams approving medical records. Brad Brack, another reliever the Orioles want to trade, worked the 9th in the rain for his 11th save. Brack put the potential tying run on second base before getting Mookie Betts to hit into a game-ending double play. Staggering through the season with the worst record in the big leagues at 29-73, the Orioles started the rebuilding process last week by trading all-star shortstop Manny Machado to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Victories have been hard to come by for Baltimore, especially against Boston. With Shoup and Beckham leading the way, the Orioles beat the Red Sox for just the 2nd time in 12 games this year and stopped a 9-game home losing streak against their division rivals. Up next, Red Sox. David Price, 11-6, 4.17 ERA, works the series finale Wednesday night. Price is a 7-0 lifetime at Camden Yards and 13-5 overall against the Orioles. Orioles, Dylan Bundy, 6-9, 4.57 ERA, starts for the Orioles, seeking to end a run of 3 starts in which he's allowed 16 runs over 12 1/3 innings.
You've just heard news stories from the Lowell Sun. Please stay tuned for more programming.
Coming soon from the Talking Information Center, join reader Judith Casulo as she presents the book Saints for All Occasions by J. Courtney Sullivan. Nora and Teresa Flynn are 21 and 17 when they leave their small village in Ireland and journey to America. Nora is the responsible sister. She's shy and serious and engaged to a man she isn't sure that she loves. Teresa is gregarious. She's thrilled by their new life in Boston and besotted with the fashionable dresses and dance halls on Dudley Street. But when Teresa ends up pregnant, Nora is forced to come up with a plan, a decision with repercussions they are both far too young to understand. 50 years later, Nora is the matriarch of a big Catholic family with 4 grown children. John, a successful, if opportunistic, political consultant. Bridget, quietly preparing to have a baby with her girlfriend. Brian, at loose ends after a failed baseball career. And Patrick, Nora's favorite, the beautiful boy who gives her no end of heartache. Estranged from her sister, Teresa is a cloistered nun, living in an abbey in rural Vermont. Until after decades of silence, a sudden death forces Nora and Teresa to confront the choices they made so long ago. Saints for All Occasions by J. Courtney Sullivan will air for 18 episodes on the Pure Fiction Book Hour beginning August 9th and ending September 3rd.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
This is volunteer reader Connie Murphy, broadcasting from Lowell, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Coming up next from the Talking Information Center, news stories from the Lawrence Eagle.
Hi, this is Ann reading the Eagle Tribune, July 25th, 2018. Methuen woman gets 90 days in jail for inhalant abuse. Newburyport. A Methuen woman caught inhaling compressed air from a can inside Market Basket earlier this year was sentenced to 90 days in jail Monday after pleading guilty to inhaling a toxic substance and disturbing the peace. Pamela Costa, 27, of 479 Broadway, was originally sentenced to 6 months in a house of correction, but saw all but 3 months suspended for 2 years while on probation. She was given credit for 59 days already served. While she is on probation, Costa must remain drug and alcohol free with random screens, attend 5 AA or NA meetings per week, and pay a $50 fine. According to a report at around 2:20 p.m. on February 16th, police received word that a woman was seen by Market Basket employees sniffing fumes from a can near the store's employees' break room. When Officer Ryan Cutter arrived, he saw Costa walking into the adjacent Walgreens pharmacy. I asked the female if I could talk to her, and she walked into Walgreens and then quickly back out and began speaking to me, Cutter wrote in his report. Costa admitted to Cutter that she inhaled compressed air from a can once. As a precaution, Cutter called for an ambulance so Costa could be evaluated by EMTs. An Atlantic ambulance crew examined her and determined she was okay. The can was later found by a Walgreens employee shortly after Costa threw it into the store right before Cutter began speaking to her. While Cutter was speaking to Costa, Officer Derek Paru spoke to the Market Basket manager, who said he walked into the break room and saw Costa inhaling from a can as he walked over to her. Costa began yelling at a framed picture on the wall and spitting around the room. When the manager spoke to Costa, she ignored his presence and acted like he wasn't there. Eventually, she left the break area and headed out of the store. That's when the manager called 911, according to Cutter's report. Cutter told Costa he would be mailing her a summons to appear in court for inhaling vapors and disturbing the peace. She was then picked up by a friend and driven away, he wrote in his report. Police close road after natural gas main break. Andover. Highland Road was blocked off Tuesday after a gas main broke around 11 a.m., police said. Feeney Brothers, a subcontractor for Columbia Gas, was moving dirt with a backhoe while servicing a new customer near 163 Highland Road when a gas main was struck, according to Andover police spokesman Lieutenant Edward Guy. Police were called to the scene shortly after 11 a.m. by an officer on detail at the site, Guy said. Feeney Brothers could not be reached for comment. A contractor of ours hit our main, and so the fire department was called, said Columbia Gas Communications Manager Tracy Stefanowitz. One customer was impacted. We evacuated one neighbor just for safety purposes for about half an hour. Only one home's gas supply was affected by the break, although 3 homes were notified of the break, Guy said. It's not common, but it does happen, Stefanowitz said of gas main breaks. We were able to quickly respond and make repairs. There's a safety protocol we follow. In most cases, what happens is, in the excavation process, there can sometimes be lots of things underground that can impact the path of where they are digging, she added. I don't think this was anything unusual. Sometimes they have big equipment in there, and it came too close to the line. Columbia Gas, Andover Police, and Andover Fire and Rescue responded to the scene, and no one was injured by the gas main break, Guy said. According to Stefanowitz, those on scene were hoping repairs would be complete sometime around 4 p.m. At this particular time, there have been no injuries reported, and they are working as diligently as possible to make sure they take care of it in short order, Guy said. Guy said the Andover Fire Department and Columbia Gas oversaw the repair to ensure the safety of those involved. Fortunately, nobody has been hurt, Guy said. Limited customers are affected. They are doing their best right now to have that patched up and limit the effects on any of the neighbors' service. Haverhill man found naked at Plasto gym. Plasto. A 34-year-old Haverhill man was arrested after allegedly stripping down and exercising naked at a Planet Fitness gym, according to police. After a search of his belongings, police also found marijuana paraphernalia, according to reports. Police arrested Eric Stagno without incident and charged him with indecent exposure, lewdness, and disorderly conduct. According to police, Stagno walked into the public gym off Route 125 in Plasto and removed all his clothes before walking back and forth a couple of times. Police Captain Brett Morgan said Stagno was found with a glass bong and a grinder, but police could not say for certain that he was under the influence of the drug. After removing his clothes, Stagno eventually settled onto a yoga mat, according to Morgan. Officers arrived at the scene to find Stagno naked on his knees and in a yoga-type position, Morgan said. The only statement police said Stagno made during the arrest was that he thought the gym was a judgment-free zone, apparently referencing the Workout Chain's slogan. Area cyclists take part in Pan Mass Challenge. It's time to ride for a cure, and that's a big reason Joshua Borden takes to the open road on his bike every summer to help make a difference in the lives of those battling cancer. Borden of Derry is one of more than 6,200 cyclists from 40 states and 7 countries that will gather in Massachusetts for the annual PMC, a summer bike ride that raises millions to critical research in cancer care at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. That pack includes area riders from Derry, Londonderry, Wyndham, and beyond, all participating in the ride August 4th and 5th, with the goal of raising $52 million to support Dana-Farber. Riders include everyone from seasoned triathletes to weekend warriors, ranging in age from 15 to 84. Many ride to honor a family member or friend lost to or being treated for cancer. More than 850 riders and volunteers are cancer survivors or current patients. The average cyclist trains for several months, solicits sponsors, and raises thousands. Volunteers, spectators, donors, and sponsors are part of the camaraderie on Ride Weekend, all working together toward a cure. The ride offers 12 different routes, varying in mileage and difficulty, passing through 46 Massachusetts towns. For Borden, it's his 4th ride in 2018, and one he does in support of friend Tracy Buzanga and her family. Tracy is one of the strongest women I've ever met in my life, Borden said. Borden said every year he meets many people with a common goal to help those battling cancer. He also thanked everyone who's supporting his mission to ride. And when I cross the finish line, I cry. Tears of joy, he said. Londonderry cyclist Pete Del Mastro will ride in his 5th Pan Mass event to honor Manchester firefighter Mike Meehan, a son-in-law of a close family friend. Class workers plan to resume strike on Monday. Lawrence, workers at Class Inc., a nonprofit agency that provides daycare and training for people with disabilities, have voted to resume their strike for better wages and working conditions. The open-ended strike is scheduled to begin Monday. The workers are calling on the agency to negotiate a contract that will increase their wages and reduce the high turnover among employees, according to Andrew Farnatano, spokesman for Local 509 of the Service Employees International Union. Local 509 represents the class workers. The union and class management held a bargaining session Monday night, but no agreement was reached, Farnatano said. Class management could not be reached for comment Tuesday evening. Robin Ellington, Director of Marketing for Class, has pointed out that its revenue is limited by rates that are set by governmental agencies, including Medicaid, the State Department of Developmental Services, and the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission. The union seeks a $1 per hour increase. Management has offered a 40-cent per hour raise, Farnatano said. During the week of July 9th to the 13th, class workers held a 5-day strike. Mayor Daniel Rivera encouraged the workers to not be afraid to walk. Several other politicians expressed support for the workers, including State Senator Barbara L'Italian, Democrat Andover, who helped avert a strike last year by arranging for a federal mediator to join the negotiations. State Reps Diana DiZoglio, Democrat Methuen, Juana Matias, Democrat Lawrence, and Frank Morin, Democrat Lawrence. The two Democratic candidates for governor, Jay Gonzalez and Bob Massey, congressional candidates Jeffrey Ballinger, Alexandra Chandler, Bij Das, Rufus Gifford, Dan Coe, Bofa Malone, and Laurie Trahan, State Senate candidates Mike Amano, John Drinkwater, Joe Espinola, and Barry Feingold, and State Representative candidate Marcos Devers joined the workers on the picket line at various times. L'Italian and Matias are also running for Congress in the 3rd District. Other community, faith, and labor leaders also supported the workers, Farnitano said. Class Inc. is facing a crisis because the low wages offered by management leave us with barely enough to keep up with our bills, creating high staff turnover that impacts the people we care for. We believe Class Inc. can and must do better, said Tom Baca of Lawrence, who has worked at Class for 6 years. He is now a driver. If management keeps refusing to do the right thing, we're prepared to go on strike and not stop until we win higher wages for ourselves and better care for the people we serve, he added. Class workers make barely above the $11 per hour Massachusetts minimum wage, Farnitano said. The low wages cause high turnover among employees, he said. Very few of the 100 or so class employees make $15 per hour, which by 2023 will be the minimum wage in the Bay State. Resolving this crisis doesn't seem to be a priority for management. They chose to shut down Class Inc.'s programs for a full week rather than pay us $1 more. We've barely heard a word from them for the last 2 weeks, and Class Inc.'s CEO, Alfred Frugoli, hasn't attended a single bargaining session this year, said Christina Castillo of Lawrence, a rehabilitation specialist who has worked at Class for 3 years. It's time for Class Inc. management to get serious about paying us a higher wage and working with us to improve the quality of care for the people we take care of every day. Fault lines harden over Methuen police contract. Methuen. Councilors are standing by their decision to cut more than $1.8 million in funding from the police department, despite its now leading to legal action by the Superiors Union. The council's action last week effectively negated a compromise to lessen steep raises for ranking officers, leading a union official to say the negotiations were now back to square one. Captain Greg Gallant, president of the Methuen Police Superior Officers Association, said his union is absolutely unwilling to make further concessions that would result in us, as a bargaining unit, not being compensated for the dangers of the job that are present today. Last week, the City Council voted to cut $1.8 million from the portion of the fiscal 2019 police budget that funds officers' salaries, en route to approving a $160 million overall city budget. Doing so, the Superiors Union contends, violated a memorandum of understanding signed by the union and the mayor's chief of staff that set forth new, lesser salary increases for the 24 superior officers. The salary issues stem from contracts for the police patrolmen and superiors approved under the previous administration, which outlined raises set to take effect July 1st. A new method of calculation included in the contracts resulted in the stacking of many benefits into related their salaries, according to the city auditor. Ancillary benefits include the Quinn Bill education incentive and holiday pay. The original contracts could have seen overall salary increases of 98%, and the police department's 5 captains earning $434,841 in average total pay, according to the city's auditor interpretation. Public outcry and pressure from the City Council, however, led to meetings between the Superiors Union and city officials. A compromise was reached on July 10th and signed on July 18th that would have reduced the average overall raises to 18.7% this fiscal year and another 7.2% on average in fiscal 2020, the final year of the contract. But some officers would still have seen raises upward of 24% this year. The Memorandum of Understanding stipulated that altering those figures would void the agreement. Councilors went ahead with their cuts anyway, with some saying the agreement wasn't good enough. At-large Councilor Ryan Hamilton even called the compromise raises absurd. Nobody gets 25% raises over 2 years. We as a body couldn't accept that, Hamilton said. In response, the Superiors Union filed a wage violation grievance with the police chief Monday, which has now been escalated to the mayor's office, Gallant said Tuesday. Though cutting police funding was the catalyst for filing the complaint, Gallant said the grievance itself is over wages paid this month under the city's 1/12 budget. With the police salaries unresolved, the City Council in late June passed a 1-month or 1/12 budget to keep the city running through July. It funded salaries for all employees at fiscal 2018 levels, meaning police superiors and city employees from other unions did not immediately see raises supposed to take effect July 1. For weeks, Gallant has said a 1/12 budget would violate the city's contractual obligations outlined in the original collective bargaining agreements. He said the union held off filing a wage complaint in good faith while talks were ongoing. Gallant said the union members now expect to be paid based on the original contract, which includes captains earning an average of $434,841 in total annual pay. As outlined in the Superiors Union contract, the grievance must go through the police chief and the mayor. If it remains unresolved after a certain time period, the union can then submit the grievance to the American Arbitration Association for a decision. The Superiors Union is also proceeding at the state level with legal action over a violation of Massachusetts labor law, Gallant said. Despite the filings, Hamilton expressed hope Tuesday that the city and Superior Union could get back to the table, preferably with a city council representative involved this time. Specifically, when we're the ones taking the votes, we're the ones making these tough decisions, we should at least be in the negotiation part of this deal, Hamilton said, adding, if we're not doing it ourselves, if we don't have a representative there, then we don't necessarily know if there could have been a better deal. Hamilton also said the council couldn't set a precedent for a 25% raise over 2 years for when it came time to negotiate the next contracts. But Gallant remained steadfast that his union reached a fair and equitable settlement with the city through the memorandum. He said union members would not accept further concessions that would put them below parity with other departments of our size and quality. Several councilors said Tuesday they had not seen the Superiors Union's grievance. The City Council will hold an executive session meeting Thursday with legal counsel from Boston-based KP Law, which is handling the police matters for the city, to go over the memorandum and contract issues. Councilors had been under the impression they still had to vote one way or another on the Memorandum of Understanding. At-large Councilor Jessica Finocchiaro said that was now unclear. Gallant said he was told by his union's attorney, Gary Nolan, that the council did not have to vote on the agreement, just the funding for it. We need to understand what is happening, Finocchiaro said. We haven't been included on any of this. We were not consulted on anything with the Memorandum of Understanding, and I do really feel that we need to be. Horoscope, Leo, July 23rd to August 22nd. A clear-cut passage should be your plan. Replace extravagance with moderation and irritability with energetic and purposeful plans. Step away from bullies and those who are less than reliable. Virgo, August 23rd to September 22nd. Personal change will boost your ego and give you the inclination to socialize and network more. The people you encounter can help you bring about positive change. Romance is on the rise. Libra, September 23rd to October 23rd. Do something industrious. Keep moving and accomplishing to avoid interaction with someone who is prone to complain or ask for too much. Take care of responsibilities to avoid repercussions. Scorpio, October 24th to November 22nd. Stick to the basics and rely on past successes to help you make wise choices. Don't let what others do anger you. Work on personal improvements instead of trying to change others. Sagittarius, November 23rd to December 21st. Secrets will be revealed if you aren't cautious when sharing information. Someone you think you can trust will use persuasiveness or devious tactics against you. Don't be gullible. Capricorn, December 22nd to January 19th. Don't sit idle, but follow through with your plans. Changes at home or at work will lead to greater opportunities and personal gains. Plan to celebrate with someone you love. Aquarius, January 20th to February 19th. Keep a level head when dealing with people who are unpredictable. Taking desperate measures when dealing with how you earn your living or how you treat those you work alongside will backfire. Pisces, February 20th to March 20th. Participation will keep you in touch with people who can help you bring about positive personal change in your life. Share your intentions and feelings with someone you love. Aries, March 21st to April 19th. Look for the positive in whatever situation you face. Don't let anyone put unfair demands on you or press you to do more than your share. Socialize with people who share your interests. Taurus, April 20th to May 20th. Keep moving forward, regardless of what others are doing. Problems at home or with a friend should be looked at seriously. It may be time to reevaluate your current associations. Gemini, May 21st to June 20th. A business trip or educational journey will open your eyes to a host of new possibilities. Before you leap into action, do your research and fact-checking to ensure success. Cancer, June 21st to July 22nd. Getting along with people and surrounding yourself with those you find inspirational will make a difference to the outcome of any venture you take on. Personal gains look promising. AG probes vaping company Juul for marketing to minors. Boston. Judith Skinnell, Methuen's superintendent of schools, stood next to Attorney General Maura Healey on Tuesday as the AG announced an investigation into Juul, the largest vaping company in the country, over its role in underage use of its products. These companies have figured out the marketing strategy that appeals to our students, especially our younger students, by smell, taste, pretty pictures, a nice lifestyle, said Scannell at a Tuesday press conference at which Healey announced the investigation. Healey wants to determine if Juul, J-U-U-L, is in violation of state laws and regulations, including the Massachusetts Consumer Protection Statute and the state's e-cigarette regulations, by failing to prevent minors from purchasing its products. Based on how the e-cigarettes are advertised and flavored, Healey said Juul Labs seems to be following the playbook that cigarette companies wrote more than a generation ago, using cartoon characters like Joe Camel and TV ads featuring the Marlboro Man that hooked youths with a harmful, smelly, and expensive habit that might wind up killing them. They're engaged in an effort to get kids addicted, Healey said. Juul has become synonymous with vaping and became a slang term for the act called juuling, Healey said. According to a 2016 report by the U.S. Surgeon General, e-cigarette use has increased by 900% among high school students in the United States. A company spokesman said Juul has never marketed to anyone underage, and the company actively tries to block anyone below the age of 21 from purchasing its products. We welcome the opportunity to work with the Massachusetts Attorney General because we too are committed to preventing underage use of Juul. We utilize stringent online tools to block attempts by those under the age of 21 from purchasing our products, including unique ID match and age verification technology, said Matt David, Chief Communications Officer at Jewel Labs. Furthermore, we have never marketed to anyone underage. In fact, we have done very little marketing relative to our growth. In the Merrimack Valley, Haverhill is the only city that has not adopted ordinances bumping the smoking age up to 21. Andover, North Andover, Lawrence, and Methuen all require someone to be at least 21 years old to purchase tobacco products. We've worked very hard over the last 15 years to develop a healthy lifestyle curriculum throughout the public school system within our health classes and our physical education classes. The curriculum has changed radically, and we saw huge improvements, said Scannell. Tobacco truly was left behind because of the push and the realities of a long, healthy life. Then all of a sudden, vaping appeared, and again, the appeal to our kids. The topic of vaping has come up at school committee meetings across the region multiple times this year. In March, Methuen schools had held a district-wide parent meeting to discuss vaping. In North Andover, the problem became so prevalent that a student who normally provides school updates at the beginning of school committee meetings asked if the board was doing anything to deal with vaping at the high school. I don't want to make it a scary thing, but it's kind of an epidemic, said Liam O'Cyril at an April school committee meeting in North Andover. School committee member Amy Mabley said Tuesday the committee has since updated the wording of the drug policies to call out vapor/e-cigarettes explicitly. By changing the policies that hopefully give teachers and administrators more support in being able to monitor the situation at school and challenge kids, she said. The big problem is it's very hard to catch a kid in the act because the Juuls and all the different vape products are hard to notice. Juuls are similar in size and appearance to a USB drive. The Attorney General also sent cease and desist demands to 2 online companies that host 3 websites. Direct eLiquid, LLC, which operates directliquid.com, and buyjuul.com, and Eon Smoke, which operates eonsmoke.com, ordering the retailers to stop selling Juul and other electronic smoking products in Massachusetts without an adequate age verification system as required by state regulations instituted by Healy in 2015.
You've just heard news stories from the Lawrence Eagle. Please stay tuned for more programming.
Each day in America, nearly 10,000 people turn 65 years old. With a population of approximately 15 million, New England lays claim to the largest percentage of baby boomers in the country. Many of these individuals are living with acquired disabilities, though they may not readily identify as having a disability, and they may not realize that their rights are protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. Since 1990, the ADA has supported a broad range of individuals to live full, meaningful lives in the community. New England ADA Center works closely with those with rights and those with responsibilities to implement the ADA. For more information, contact us today at newenglandada.org, a project of the Institute for Human-Centered Design.
My name is Meera Batra, and this is How I Live United. Many families have come to America for a better life. I advocate for these families with United Way. United Way empowers them to see opportunities available. We help them get involved with their kids' schools and network within the community. My name is Meera Batra. I help families see opportunity and succeed. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
Hi, this is volunteer reader Bob Kay, broadcasting from Springfield, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Coming up next from the Talking Information Center, news stories from the Fall River Herald.
Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. My name is Marita McKinnon, and I am your reader for today's edition of the news in the Fall River area. Today is Wednesday, July 25th, 2018, and we're going to start out of the Herald News for the Fall River area. We're going to begin with some entertainment news. It's titled One Sweet Business. This article is written by Linda Murphy. Back in the day, the expression, like a kid in a candy store, had a lot more meaning when you could head out with 50 cents or $1 from your parents and literally fill up a bag with penny candy from the corner store. The mom-and-pop corner stores that sold penny candy are pretty much a thing of the past, as well as candy for 1 cent. But Elias Farris is doing his best to keep the tradition of penny candy going strong with the Penny Candy Store, a wholesale, retail, and internet-based operation out of Sharon. At displays like the one recently installed at the 7-Eleven at the corner of Robertson Street and New Boston Road, or Robeson Street and New Boston Road, penny candy fans will find a wall of 80 or so types of penny candy. UFOs, paper candy stripes, Bit-O-Honeys, squirrel nut zippers, Mary Janes, banana splits, and much of the other bin-style candy are packaged up in small snack bags ready for purchase. I have a lot of love maintaining penny candy in New England, and I hope it continues for a long time, says Farrs. While penny candy is a tradition in New England, it's not well known in the rest of the country, he said. Farr said it's probably because much of the candy started being made here in Massachusetts and other New England states where it originally was sold in store bins. The Penny Candy Store sells the prepackaged bags of penny candy to stores such as CVS and 7-Eleven, as well as gift shops in the coastal states running from Virginia to Maine. The Penny Candy Store also has a retail operation in Sharon, and it sells online as well. Although they're on a cul-de-sac in an industrial park, Ferris says people find their way to the retail store. When they see the array of candy, they take pictures, videos, and of course, buy a lot to take home. Color-themed parties, baby and bridal showers, weddings, graduations, and birthdays are driving a trend in customers purchasing bulk items of single-color candies. On the website, Farrs groups the candy by colors to make it easier for those buying licorice, rock candy, jelly beans, and other items for party favors and candy buffets. The Penny Candy Store's most popular penny candy items include caramel bullseyes, licorice laces, UFOs, and Mary Janes, he said. It's a sweet business, added Farrs. Up next, turning to some political news out of Washington. Pompeo. U.S. will never recognize Russia annexation of Crimea. This is written by the Associated Press for Washington. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Wednesday the United States will never recognize Russia's annexation of Crimea, as he sought to fend off charges from lawmakers and others that President Donald Trump and his administration are being soft on Russia. In a statement titled Crimea Declaration, Pompeo said the U.S. will continue to insist that Ukraine's territorial integrity be restored. He said the U.S. would hold to its long-standing principle of refusing to recognize Kremlin claims of sovereignty over territory seized by force in violation of international law. And he called for Russia to respect principles it claims to respect and end its occupation of Crimea. In concert with allies, partners, and the international community, the United States rejects Russia's attempted annexation of Crimea and pledges to maintain this policy until Ukraine's territorial integrity is restored, Pompeo said in the declaration, which was released by the State Department shortly before he was to testify before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Pompeo is expected to face tough questioning from committee members about Trump's summit with Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Trump has previously suggested that U.S. opposition to Russia's annexation of Crimea could be reconsidered. In anticipation of potentially hostile questions, the Crimea Declaration sought to underscore U.S. commitments to the post-World War II international order that many believe Trump has weakened. In it, Pompeo took Russia to task for its actions in Ukraine, particularly the 2014 annexation of Crimea. Russia has defended its move, saying the annexation was approved by Crimean voters in a referendum. The U.S. and its European allies have all said the referendum was illegal as it was held without the consent of the government and Kyiv and was conducted in a highly flawed manner. Through its actions, Russia has acted in a manner unworthy of a great nation and has chosen to isolate itself from the international community, Pompeo said in a statement. Even before the statement was released, Pompeo was taking a tough line on Russia and defending the Trump-Putin meeting as he prepared for his Senate testimony. In an interview transcript released ahead of the Crimea statement, Pompeo said Trump and Putin didn't find much place to agree on Ukraine when they met in Finland last week. He said Trump made clear to Putin that the so-called Minsk Accords to settle the Ukraine conflict is the right path forward. He also reiterated U.S. support for an investigation that held Russia responsible for downing a Malaysian airliner over East Ukraine in 2014. Pompeo said that what the Russians did was deeply immoral, and that those responsible for the MH17 disaster should be held accountable. Pompeo made the comments in a Tuesday interview with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in California, where he and Defense Secretary James Mattis co-hosted meetings this week with their Australian counterparts. The interview was a likely preview of his Senate testimony, which comes as lawmakers are seeking answers on what the two leaders may have agreed to in Helsinki. The White House and State Department have been vague when pressed for specifics. In the interview, Pompeo acknowledged that he was not in the room when Trump and Putin met, with only interpreters present for nearly 2 hours in the Finnish capital. But he said he had a good understanding of what took place based on his presence at a larger meeting between the two sides, as well as conversations with Trump and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. It was an incredibly constructive engagement for President Trump and President Putin, an important one for the world, Pompeo said. These are two nuclear superpowers. They ought to be engaged in conversations, and they covered a wide range of topics. They disagreed on many things, but also set forward some constructive paths on important topics. On Ukraine, Pompeo said the differences were sharp. The president was strong in making sure that the world understood that the Minsk path is the right path forward, he said. Asked about MH17, in which dozens of Australian passengers were killed, Pompeo called it a real tragedy. What the Russians did there is deeply immoral, he said. They ought to be held accountable. Out of Washington, that was the Associated Press with Pompeo. Turning to sports news now, the Sox defense becoming secret to team success. This is written by Bill Koch and the Providence Journal. From Baltimore, Trey Mancini led off the bottom of the 7th inning Monday night by rocketing a pitch from Ryan Brassear to straightaway center field. The ball screamed toward the wall at 106.3 miles per hour, and the Orioles outfielder appeared to have extra bases in his back pocket. Brasier took a few steps towards the Red Sox dugout in nervous anticipation of what would come next. Boston pitchers Chris Sale and Brian Johnson watched the play from the bench with a significantly greater measure of calm than Brasier, who is making just his 6th appearance of the season. They've seen the sort of dead sprint to the wall by Jackie Bradley Jr. before, eyes darting from the grass to the ball in flight and back to the fence in succession. Bradley reached up and made a spectacular leaping backhanded catch, a ball he had a 2% chance of reeling in per StatCast. Brasier had the first out of what proved to be a scoreless inning in a 5-3 victory to open the series here at Camden Yards. Now it's almost turned into, when it's hit, you expect everything to be caught, Johnson said. Almost in a joking way, but somewhat in a serious way, too. The catches that they're making are incredible. What they're doing out there is incredible. Bradley and Andrew Benintendi each had a hand in stopping what could have been Baltimore rallies on Monday. Fangraphs ranks Mookie Betts among the top 10 outfielders in the big leagues in defensive runs saved and UZR. Toss in the occasional wall crash and catch by J.D. Martinez, and the Sox have, or seem to have, a rather reliable unit between the foul poles. I think it just gives the team confidence, knowing they can make a pitch and have the defense behind them playing well, Bradley said Monday. You don't have to worry about trying to make that perfect pitch all the time. Collectively, it's fun. To hear Bradley describe his escapades in center is something akin to hearing Albert Einstein lecture on modern physics. It might be simple enough in Bradley's mind to take his eyes off the ball twice while it's in flight, relocate it each time, catch it in his glove, and not smash face first into the padding. But that's exactly what he did before casually regaining his balance and flipping it back toward the infield. I keep saying he's the best defensive center fielder in the big leagues, Red Sox manager Alex Cora said Monday. I think playing at Fenway Park doesn't help him as far as metrics and all that, but when you see him on a daily basis, the plays he makes, cutting the ball in the gaps and keeping guys at first when they should have doubles, I don't know, they should add some points for that. Well, not quite the equal of his peers with his feet, Benintendi makes an impact with his arm. He started a 7-6-2 relay to end the third inning on Monday, a key play in what at the time was a 1-0 game. It was the 8th assist collected by Benintendi on an out at the plate since the start of 2017, and 7 of those have cut down the tying or go-ahead run. Defensively, I think he's good, but he could be better, Cora said, and he's working at it. He can be a 5-tool player. The obvious conclusion is Boston has moved on from the traditional collection of lumbering sluggers in the field that seemed to define its lineup before a long-awaited World Series title in 2004. The Red Sox sat 9th in team UZR entering Tuesday and were above league average at first base, shortstop, center field, and right field. At no point in time do you feel like you should have to pitch around a hitter because of your defense, Johnson said. There's none of that on this team. If you know if the ball's put in play, there's a very, very good chance there's going to be an out. Out of sports or for sports news, that was about the Red Sox. In other local news, Taunton Casino efforts underway this week in Boston and Washington. This article is written by Matt Murphy, and this comes to us from the State House News Service out of Boston. With casinos in Springfield and Everett poised to open within the next year, the battle over the state's third casino license continues to smolder as Congress weighs a bill that would reaffirm the Mashpee Wampag's right to protected land in Taunton and Mashpee. Representative William Keating and most of the state's congressional delegation are going to bat for the Mashpee tribe in the hope of solidifying a decision made under President Barack Obama to grant the Wampanoag a 320-acre reservation that the tribe planned to use to construct a resort casino in East Taunton. A federal judge's ruling in 2016, however, nullified that decision, and a casino developer interested in building a resort in nearby Brockton is ramping up the pressure on the Massachusetts Gaming Commission to move on from the tribe and reconsider its application for the last remaining license. Keating, who represents Mashpee, has filed legislation that would use the power of Congress to reaffirm the 2015 decision by the Interior Department to take land into trust for the tribe, superseding U.S. District Court Judge William Young's ruling against the Mashpee Wampanoag. Keating and tribe chairman Cedric Cromwell testified in support of that bill Tuesday at a hearing on Capitol Hill, where the acting director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs told a House subcommittee that the Bureau, at this time, has no plans to take the tribe's land out of trust. The Bureau's director, Darrell LeCount, said the agency did not have a position on Keating's bill, but when asked directly whether the Mashpee Wampanoag's land was in danger of being removed from trust, he said, "I have heard no plans to do this." Keating's bill had considerable support among the members of the subcommittee, but proponents of the Brockton casino say it would be foolish for the state to be optimistic that a Republican Congress or the Trump administration would back a bill being pushed by Massachusetts Democrats. Representatives Joseph Kennedy, whose district includes Taunton, and Catherine Clark, Michael Cupano, Steve Lynch, Jim McGovern, Seth Moulton, and Nikki Songus are all co-sponsors of Keating's bill, while Representative Richard Neal of Springfield is the only House member not to sign on. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Edward Markey, both Democrats, are behind the bill in the Senate. Mass Gaming and Entertainment, the developer behind the bid to build a casino on the Brockton Fairgrounds, has petitioned the Massachusetts Gaming Commission to reconsider its bid, which was deemed suitable but ultimately rejected in 2016, in part because it was believed that the tribe would already be building a casino in the region. The petition is on the commissioner's meeting agenda for Thursday. The developers, who have the backing of local Brockton officials, plan to argue to the commission that further delay will put southeastern Massachusetts at an even greater competitive disadvantage to gaming facilities in Rhode Island and Connecticut that are eating into market share. The Commission should not permit the prospect of such speculative and flawed legislation to cause yet further delay, which will only continue to harm southeastern Massachusetts and the Commonwealth, lawyers for Mass Gaming and Entertainment wrote to the Commission. The developer is asking for the Gaming Commission to reconsider the Brockton casino application without reopening the region to bids from other interested developers. The history of the tribe's bid to build a casino in Taunton is long and winding, but appear to be settled in 2015 when the Department of the Interior signed off on reservation lands that included 170 acres in Mashpee and 151 acres in Taunton. The tribe went so far as to break ground on its first light casino before a Boston federal court judge ruled in the summer of 2016 that only tribes federally recognized before 1934 can be eligible for reservation lands. Judge Young remanded the Mashpee Wampanoag's case back to the U.S. Department of Interior, which issued a draft decision in June of 2017 revoking the tribe's land in trust before backing off. It said in order to consider additional information. LeCount told the Congressional Subcommittee Tuesday that he didn't know when the full review might be complete, but he did not close the door to the Bureau backing Keating's legislation to nullify the judge's ruling. The solicitors were concerned about the decision that came from the court, and they want to iron that out before they go full support of this, LeCount told the subcommittee. Representative Doug LaMalfa, a California Republican and chairman of the subcommittee, is a co-sponsor of Keating's legislation. And Representative Donald Young, an Alaskan Republican, told LeCount the Bureau should support it as well. It would be a good idea. It's a good place of legislation, Young said. Representative Ruben Gallego, an Arizona Democrat, paid homage to the Mashpee Wampanoag's ancestry as the people who welcomed the Pilgrims off the Mayflower in Plymouth. And Representative Darren Soto, a Florida Democrat, apologized to Cromwell. I'm sorry you have to go through this whole contorted process just to recognize lands that have been in your heritage for thousands of years, Soto said. Cromwell said that if his tribe loses its reservation, it would be the first time since the middle of the last century that the federal government had rescinded land in trust. It really means that we could lose programs and services around our elders for education and housing. We may lose our school as well, Cromwell said. This is very devastating if it happens. He added that State House Minority Leader Brad Jones had also submitted testimony in support of the legislation. During the hearing, former Congressman Bill Delahunt, who held Keating's seat prior to the born Democrat, stood in the back of the room. While court rulings have maintained the tribes had to be federally recognized before 1934 in order to qualify for land in trust, the Mashpee have argued that they were under federal jurisdiction long before that date, and it was an error that they were not recognized until 2007. Now, Brockton Mayor Bill Carpenter and other opponents of Keating's bill were not invited to testify at Tuesday's hearing in Washington, but in a letter submitted to the subcommittee, he said a Brockton should not be held hostage any longer. The Mashpee tribe has had years to make their case for federal recognition and to attempt to get land and trust approval. Over 2 years after Brockton's bid for a casino was denied, principally because of the uncertainty about a tribal casino, it is clear to every reasonable person that there will be no tribal casino in Massachusetts, certainly not in the near future, Carpenter wrote. The mayor said that the casino in his city as the anchor of sports and entertainment complex near the Brockton Fairgrounds could deliver $60 million in economic gains for the local economy, $12 million in annual payments for the city, and $70 million in annual taxes for the state. That is the breakdown there for the Taunton casino efforts that are underway this week in Boston and Washington. Turning to entertainment news and turning to the beer nut here. Local breweries stir up ales for ALS beer. This article is written by Norman Miller. There is no cure for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. ALS is a fatal progressive neurological disease that attacks the body, robbing people of their ability to control and use their muscles. Several local breweries are trying to raise money to help research a cure for ALS, often called Lou Gehrig's disease, by brewing beer for the Ales for ALS campaign. The national campaign provides a special hop blend to breweries. In exchange, the participating breweries will each brew a beer with that hop blend and donate at least $1 for each pint of the beer that is sold. On Saturday, Wormtown Brewery in Worcester will host an Ales for ALS party as they release their newest version of the beer. Cans and draft of the IPA will be available. The party will be at the 72 Shrewsbury Street Brewery from 2 to 8 p.m. There will be the Ice Bucket Challenge, where attendees will get a chance to vote to decide which 3 employees get a bucket of ice-cold water dumped on them. There will also be raffle tickets for sale for several prizes. Now, the goal is to raise at least $3,500 on Saturday for the program, which donates the money to the ALS Therapy Development Institute. Also participating in the brewing is Medusa Brewing Company in Hudson. Their Ales for ALS IPA is currently available. Medusa has announced they will donate $2 for every 13 or 16-ounce beer that is poured in their Main Street tap room, and $1 for every 5-ounce sample served and $1 per can sold. They describe the new IPA as lush and tropical, brewed with soursop fruit and tangerine juice to complement a fruity, citrusy blend of hops. Idle Hands Craft Ales of Malden has also brewed a beer for ALS, or Ales for ALS, called Change Up 13. It is available at their 89 Commercial Street brewery. Idle Hands, they will donate $1 for every Change Up 13 beer poured at the brewery, and they'll donate $1.50 for every can that they sell. Now, other Massachusetts breweries that have or will release ales for ALS beers in 2018 are the following: Our Knot Brewing Company of Somerville, Boston Beer Company, also known as Sam Adams of Jamaica Plain, Cambridge Brewing Company, Democracy Brewing Company of Boston, Harpoon Brewery of Boston, Iron Duke Brewing Company of Ludlow, Notch Brewing of Salem, and True North Ale Company of Ipswich. Now also, Suds and Sausages. And other beery news here. Exhibit A Brewing Company of Framingham is turning 2 years old and will be hosting a party to celebrate. The party will be held at the 81 Morton Street Brewery from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday, August 25th. Again, 11 to 10 on Saturday, August 25th. The entry is free, but VIP tickets will allow people to get in an hour early. They also get a 4-pack of the new anniversary IPA, an anniversary poster, and other swag. Now, food will be available to purchase from Spoko Polish Street Food from noon to 5 p.m., as well as the Brato Beer House and Kitchen from 5 to 10 p.m. Now, folks can vote for their favorite sausage in a no-holds-barred sausage throwdown between the two food trucks. In addition, several bands will perform, including Heirloom Seeds, Dub Apocalypse, and the Macrotones. And DJ J Wall will also be on hand. Now, to purchase tickets, you can get those VIP tickets for $35 each, and they're available on Facebook and the website there on Facebook. So if you type in the name of the brewing company, Exhibit A Brewing Company of Framingham, you can find that on Facebook and purchase those $35 tickets there. Well, everyone, that wraps up the article, and as well as today's edition of the Fall River Area News. Today, once again, is Wednesday, July 25th, 2018. And today we've been reading out of the Herald News, once again, for the Fall River area. My name is Marita McKinnon, and I've been your reader for today. And until next time, everyone, have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll talk to you next time.
You've just heard news stories from the Fall River Herald. Please stay tuned for more programming.
Hi, this is Bob Branco, one of the co-hosts for In Perspective. You can still hear our programs on the TIC website. Just go to www.ticnetwork.org and hear any show that's available to you. Again, www.ticnetwork.org.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, tail-wagging, backyard-hanging, and, of course, companionship.
And what breed would you say Satchmo is?
I'd have to go with maybe a lavish terrier-hound chihuahua-looking kind of mix.
Tremendous dog.
I'd also like to point out Satchmo's coloring, a white, gray, brown, black brindle, simply marvelous.
You know, it's such a treat to watch a dog like this.
Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance, so common with this group.
And finally, the loving face lick.
It's great how he just gets in there and, well, licks.
Fantastic. But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Programming on the Massachusetts Reading Network is made possible in part by generous contributions from listeners just like you. If you'd like to make a contribution, you can do so by sending your gift to TIC, Post Office Box 519, Marshfield, Mass. 02050. And thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
This is volunteer reader Maureen, broadcasting from Marshfield, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Coming up next from the Talking Information Center, news stories from the New Bedford Times.
Hi everybody, this is Jeff reading the New Bedford Standard Times for the Wednesday, July 25th, 2018. Our first story on the front page is headlined, Tech Issues, Driver Shortage, Challenge Boston Food Bank. Faced with technology issues and a shortage of workers, the Greater Boston Food Bank is having a tough start to its summer. The Boston-based food bank, which delivers roughly 50 million meals to the hungry each year, has experienced widespread glitches since the rollout of a new ordering system in June. The new system, meant to be more efficient and user-friendly, has run into various issues, such as producing inaccurate orders and misreporting what products are in stock. Additionally, the nonprofit has struggled to fill open delivery positions, forcing it to increase its starting pay. Emma Mello, who directs the pantry at Pace Incorporated in New Bedford, said the Boston Pantry is striving to hire enough people so that the problems with the distribution can be resolved. Mello, who is on the statewide committee of food pantries, said that people don't want to drive for hours every day to get in and out of Boston for a low-paying job. She said a bus might be the answer, but at a committee meeting last week, the hiring issue topped the list, and so far, there are no answers. Stacy Halal, who runs the pantry at St. Anthony of Padua in New Bedford, said there has been a dramatic reduction in the amount of food available for the pantries. Her cooler truck used to bring home 19,000 pounds a week. That is down to 4,000 on some weeks, she said. Glitches are not entirely uncommon in the rollout of new technology systems, but the nonprofit, now with the benefit of hindsight, may have been overly optimistic about its readiness. We overestimated, perhaps, our ability to fully integrate it, Fortunato said. The issue, however, isn't impacting everyone. Wendy Barry, co-founder of Taunton Area Community Table Incorporated, is actually finding the new system to be helpful. We have no problems at all with the new system, Barry wrote in an email. We found it to be user-friendly. The Greater Boston Food Bank hopes the new system, which agencies use to order food and the food bank uses to track inventory, will eventually serve all of its partners in a similar way once it irons out all the kinks. But the nonprofit is simultaneously dealing with disruptions in other areas of operations. Like most other employers of truck drivers and warehouse workers, the GBFB is struggling to fill open positions, citing a widespread shortage in the labor market. If you matched our offer to what Amazon offers, there isn't a lot of difference, Fortunato said. It's a driver's market, and there are plenty of great jobs out there. The American Trucking Associations last year estimated the shortage of drivers nationwide would exceed 50,000 by the end of 2017, representing a 37% increase compared to 2016. If the trend continues, the shortage would grow to 174,000 by 2026. The shortfall is exacerbated by an increasing amount of business, paired with an aging workforce and an unsustainable pipeline of new workers. Over the next decade, the trucking industry will need to hire roughly 898,000 new drivers, or an average of nearly 90,000 per year, according to a 2017 report. In an effort to stay competitive, the GBFB increased its starting salary to $16 per hour, preemptively exceeding the new so-called Grand Bargain Massachusetts law requiring the minimum wage be increased to $15 per hour over the next 5 years. Furtado is hopeful the higher pay will attract more workers, and once its technology issues come to an end, the nonprofit can get back to business as usual. Ultimately, it's going to be great for our partners and the people we serve, Fortunato said. We just have to get there and try to minimize the disruptions. From Wareham, the headline reads, Man arrested in Wareham for making threat to kill police officer, by Kurt Brown. Wareham. A 70-year-old man arrested previously for intoxication in possession of a gun was arrested again Monday for making threats to kill a police officer, police said. Richard LePage of Douglas was located about 11:30 a.m. on Main Street near Cedar Street in Wareham by Officer Richard Robideau and taken into custody according to a news release from Acting Police Chief John A. Walczak. LePage was charged with making threats to kill a police officer and a warrant, the release said. The suspect relayed to an unnamed Wareham town official that he wanted to kill a police officer and had the means to do it, police said. LePage was found after the information was given to police. He was taken to the Wareham Police Department for booking and to Wareham District Court for arraignment. LePage was the same man arrested July 16th by police around 8:45 a.m. when officers responded to the area of Bessie Park for a report of an intoxicated man in a boat. Officers Carl Baptista and Richard Robideau said LePage displayed a confrontational attitude, police said. Baptiste noted a handgun on the console and LePage became hostile, screaming to get off his boat, police said. The firearm, which was loaded, was secured by officers. LePage was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct and being an intoxicated person in possession of a firearm, according to police. On that occasion, he was transported to the Wareham station. The threat that sparked Monday's arrest was said in front of a Wareham official and targeted all police officers, Walczak told the Standard Times. A BOLO, or be on the lookout, was issued because he already had a warrant outstanding coupled with the threat, and police wanted to warn all officers. In other arrests, Raynell Fisher, 22 of Buzzards Bay, is charged with shoplifting. She's accused of stealing $25.95 worth of merchandise from Walmart. And Tina Hill, 46 of Onset, was charged with 2 warrants. Our next story reads, Chromebooks, likely on horizon for Dartmouth students, by Amy Chivaroli. Dartmouth, come October, Dartmouth students in middle school and high school could get their own Chromebooks to use and take home, although funding still needs to be secured, a school official said. Jonathan Galashaw, Technology Director of Dartmouth Public Schools, is exploring a one-to-one technology initiative leaning towards Chromebooks, potentially using funds from accepting students outside of the district. The initiative means students will get their own device, likely a Chromebook, as a resource to access educational materials, communicate with classmates and teachers, and better manage and control their own educational experience. Since the high school is changing its schedule from 4 blocks to 7 periods, turning 86-minute classes into 50 minutes, Galashaw said he wants to give them time to adjust. As for cost, there's that of the device and possibly insurance, he said, if something happens to it. Logistics include creating a procedure for students to seek services for any computer issues and possibly having loaner computers if repairs need to be done on the one that's been assigned to a student. He noted that during this summer he's been doing background work in the schools, in part to prepare for such a rollout. He's in the process of adding 75 wireless access points at the high school to expand the Wi-Fi and doubling the internet speed. The district has researched different platforms, such as iPads, Chromebooks, and regular PCs, Galashaw said. The district is leaning towards Chromebooks because teachers have been using Google Classroom, a free service where teachers can create assignments with attachments and send them to students and grade their work, providing feedback. Professional development for teachers is planned for the end of August and will continue periodically throughout the year. Galashaw said students will get some instructions in class, but they don't need a lot of help when it comes to using technology. Galashaw said the district already has carts with iPads and Chromebooks, which are popular, in addition to PCs. Those devices remain on site at the schools, and teachers check them out to use them in the classroom. The PCs, especially in the high school labs where they're more popular, will remain because they have specialized software, like an engineering program. Other districts have done similar initiatives and have been pulling a lot from their implementation, Galashaw said. He's contacted districts such as North Attleboro and Middleborough to ask about their successes and failures. But still, we'll have our own challenges, he said. He estimates students could start to see the rollout in October, given that funding is approved. Moving on to the opinion pages. Under our view, the view of the New Bedford Standard Times, the headline reads, "A strategic plan is the key to the airport's success." They're not building new airports in densely populated areas like eastern Massachusetts. The city of New Bedford is keenly aware of that fact and is in the midst of developing a strategic plan to make the most of its municipal airport, one of the most valuable transportation assets that New Bedford possesses. Mayor John Mitchell announced last month that business and civic leaders have come together in a Blue Ribbon Commission to work on a strategic plan that will improve the facility's role as a job creator for the local economy. A big part of the plan will be developing the airport as a commercial hub. Another part will be develop it as a freight hub. Mitchell points out that it's increasingly difficult to travel to and from Boston's Logan Airport in a timely manner from southeastern Massachusetts. The Southeast Expressway and Route 95 and Route 24 are just too gridlocked at too many different times of day. Convenience is a big selling point for commercial services. Regional airports like Providence, Worcester, and Manchester, New Hampshire have shown. Once the New Bedford Airport has a strategic plan in place with an ability to upgrade the terminal and the airport entrance, commercial services will come, the mayor believes. The 6-week trial run of Elite Airways last November appears to have been a success, and officials say that Elite, or another airline, will return in the not-too-distant future. Another possibility for New Bedford airport business is for storage of planes for corporate jets that are used by executives, with homes on Nantucket. There are also development possibilities for the future of the flight school, run by Bridgewater State College. One of the exciting ideas is the development of a freight business to complement the New Bedford Port's growing freight service. The opening of the mega Amazon Dream Center in nearby Fall River offers an opportunity for the airport to serve as a freight hub, and UPS is in the midst of investing $20 billion in automated warehouses to serve online shopping's exponential growth. Mitchell says the city should go after that business. The city airport has significant potential in large part because of where it is situated geographically, he said. Its catchment area includes all of the South Coast, Cape Cod, and many of the South Shore suburbs. With a strategic plan, the city can make improvements to the outdated terminal at the airport, possibly with a parking garage, TSA security, and other amenities. One improvement might be a new entrance off Mount Pleasant Street that would make better presentation than the current Shawmut Avenue entrance, which passes through a grimy industrial district. A Mount Pleasant entrance would also be more accessible from the highway. Last week, Congressman Bill Keating announced that a $1 million federal grant will be used to upgrade the airport's secondary runway. The primary runway was already upgraded 4 or 5 years ago. The grant also earmarked $765,000 for a new firefighting ladder truck. Economic development is all about leveraging the assets a community and a region possesses. New Bedford Airport is a big asset to both the city and all of southeastern Massachusetts. Its success demands that we plan well and invest in it. It's encouraging to see that local government and business leaders have a plan for that. Under the heading National View, we see Trump and Pompeo offer differing rhetoric on Iran. But for one nagging detail, Secretary of State Pompeo's speech on Sunday about Iran stands as one of the finest moments in U.S.-Iran relations since the 1979 revolution. Unfortunately, that detail is not minor. It's the man Pompeo reports to, President Donald Trump. First, the good news about the speech, titled Supporting Iranian Voices. The Secretary named names, not only shameful leaders like Sadat Larijani, the head of Iran's judiciary, who stands accused of embezzling more than $300 million, but also a Sufi dissident known only as Mr. Salas, who was hanged by the regime last month. He also praised successful Iranian Americans such as Maken Delrahim, an assistant attorney general. At a time when Iranian citizens are organizing protests and strikes about everything from corruption to drought, Pompeo's message was perfectly timed. It'll resonate with a population that feels cheated out of the economic boom promised from the 2015 nuclear deal, and it's a reminder that America has no quarrel with Iranians, only their leaders. Another strength of Pompeo's speech is that he did not directly call for regime change, a phrase that implies the next Iranian revolution will come from America, not Iran. America's approach, Pompeo said, will focus on going after the regime's unaccountable leaders, not the Iranian people. And now for the bad news. Pompeo's boss is a man who loves to cut deals. And even though Trump's all-caps tweets Sunday evening would appear to foreclose such a deal if passed as preload, his threats are part of a strategy to prod Iran's leaders to negotiate. The obvious parallel here is with North Korea. Last year, Trump threatened fire and fury like the world has never seen against Pyongyang's little rocket man. Trump later invited Ji Seon-ho, a North Korean defector who endured torture and deprivation, to this year's State of the Union. And yet in June, Trump met with the man who oversees the very regime that Trump had called depraved just months earlier, even fawning about how much Kim Jong-un's people really love him. This is the danger now for the Pompeo approach to Iran. If Iran agrees to talks after crippling sanctions are reimposed in November, would this mean the U.S. is no longer interested in exposing the larceny of the Iranian regime? Would Pompeo's demand that Iranian leaders treat their people with dignity go the way of Trump's declaration of solidarity with Koreans who have endured their country's gulags? Iranian officials claim that the Trump administration approached them several times last year asking for a meeting between Trump and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, and Trump has said as much himself. At his press conference with Kim in Singapore in June, Trump said, "I hope at the appropriate time after the sanctions kick in and they are brutal on what we put on Iran, I hope they come back and negotiate a real deal." Negotiations are not in and of themselves a bad thing. The worry is that in any discussions, the emphasis would be on the regime's corruption and abuse would be lost. It's not an unwarranted concern that 12 demands that Pompeo made of Iran in a May speech focused on Iran's support for terror, its nuclear program, and its meddling in the affairs of its neighbors. They did not include benchmarks for Iranian democracy or human rights. So far, the Trump administration's support for human rights is as convenient and transactional as the rest of the president's foreign policy. This stands in contrast to the approach of Ronald Reagan, who negotiated arms control and trade agreements with the Soviet Union while simultaneously pressing Moscow to free its dissidents. Pompeo was an admirer of Reagan. His speech on Sunday was delivered at the Reagan Presidential Library in California. But Pompeo is not the president, and Donald Trump has proven that any speeches about freedom coming from his administration, even principled ones such as Pompeo's, are not anchored in conviction. Rather, they're rhetorical maneuvers to pressure autocrats to submit to better terms. Eli Lake is a Bloomberg opinion columnist covering national security and foreign policy. He was a senior national security correspondent for the Daily Beast and covered national security intelligence for the Washington Times, the New York Sun, UPI, and other right-wing organizations. Our next article is by Jennifer Rubin, and it's National View. Trump makes abortion rights more popular than ever. As with the Affordable Care Act, which gained majority support only when President Trump threatened to take it away, Trump's nomination of a second Supreme Court justice off the list of approved right-wing judges has driven support for abortion rights to new heights. The latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll finds that 71% of American voters believe the decision, which established a woman's legal right to an abortion, should not be overturned. Just 23% say the ruling should be reversed. This is unprecedented. That's the highest level of support for the decision and the lowest share of votes who want Roe v. Wade overturned in the poll's history dating back to 2005. In 1989, according to Gallup's survey, 58% said they believed it should stay in place while 31% disagreed. How does Trump manage to drum up support for progressive policies? We may not appreciate what we have, be it a right, a service, or a product, but faced with losing it entirely, we recoil. The fear of loss can trigger newfound appreciation for the status quo. In the case of abortion, Roe v. Wade was decided back in 1973. Generations of women and men have grown up never imagining that abortion could be criminalized. Now they are presented with the possibility access to abortion service could be severely curtailed, if not eliminated, in parts of the country. Voters are therefore motivated to express support for pro-abortion rights candidates. Voters say that they are more likely to vote for a political candidate who supports abortion rights rather than for one who opposes them. 44% of voters said they would be more likely to vote for a pro-abortion rights candidate, while 26% said they would be more likely to support a candidate who backs restrictions on abortions. About 3 in 10, 29%, said that a candidate's views on abortion would make no difference to their vote choice. Moreover, support for the nomination of Judge Brett M. Kavanaugh, widely perceived to be hostile to Roe, is shockingly poor. 32% of voters back his nomination, while 26% say he should not be confirmed. That's a net +6 in support. That's compared with 32% supporting and 20% opposing the previous Supreme Court nominee, Neil Gorsuch, a net +12 in support. Net support for the confirmations of John Roberts, Samuel Alito, and Sonia Sotomayor was similarly in double digits, although Elena Kagan enjoyed about the same level of backing in June 2010 as Kavanaugh does now, 29% supporting versus 23% opposing. Opposition to Kavanaugh's confirmation is particularly pronounced among Democrats, 10% support, 52% oppose. African Americans, 9% support, 38% oppose. And women with a college degree, 21% support, 38% oppose. As a practical matter, vocal support for Roe and public trepidation about Kavanaugh may make it easier for red state Democrats to oppose the nomination. It will intensify pressure on pro-choice Republican Senators Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. In November and beyond, Kavanaugh's nomination certainly could help Democrats rally members of their base, especially married women who of late have fled the GOP, expressing deep concerns about Trump's presidency, and turned out in strong numbers in special election primaries and state elections in 2017 and 2018. It's not just Democrats who understand that the prospect of reversing Roe is a political loser. Conservatives who have long promised to reverse Roe and allow states to ban virtually all abortions now insist that Roe really wouldn't be tossed aside, maybe just trimmed around the edges. That disingenuous gambit has not fooled many voters. They understand fully the difference between a 5-4 majority for abortion protection and a 5-4 majority composed of justices selected precisely because they believe Roe lacks constitutional merit. And that was a column by Jennifer Rubin, who writes the Right Turn blog for the Washington Post, offering reported opinions from a center-right perspective. But in more national view, Karen Adia writes, soccer is exposing Europe's racist hypocrisies. The beautiful game has been revealing many ugly truths about racism and identity in Europe. In the aftermath of the World Cup, the French and German national soccer teams have found themselves at the center of a renewed debate about race, assimilation, and national identity that has highlighted the precarious position that many non-white immigrants and first-generation people find themselves in while living in the West. On Sunday, the player Mesut Ozil announced in a series of powerful and pained social media posts that he was quitting the German national team due to racism and mistreatment from the German media, sponsors, and the German Football Association. At the heart of his decision was German backlash to a photograph that Ozil took with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in May during a visit in London. German media commentators called the photo a major blow to the debate over integration. The 29-year-old footballer, who was born in Germany and who is of Turkish descent, and who was part of the German squad that won the 2014 World Cup, said the German Football Association and the media blamed him and his dual heritage for Germany's lackluster performance in this year's World Cup. Meanwhile, Africans and black people around the world celebrated France and its players of African descent. As Kenyan writer Patrick Gathara noted in the Washington Post, many joyfully claimed the team is African, including Kenyan Deputy President William Ruto, who declared that France was the only African team in the finals. South African comedian and The Daily Show host Trevor Noah also get in on the joke. Non-black French people reacted with hostile outrage over any hint of associating their team with Africa. French writers dismissed the celebration as coming from liberals in the United States mimicking the far right's obsession with race and origins, and have said that identity politics activists are paving the way for this kind of racist backlash. Even the French ambassador to the United States, Gerard Araud, felt so aggrieved by comparisons to Africa that he felt compelled to write a formal letter to Noah, saying that by calling them African, he was denying their Frenchness. It's absurd to equate black and African joy and pride at seeing the success of the players with the ideology of racists and white supremacists. Besides, for a country that claims to not see race, it was French national coach Laurent Blanc who reportedly backed a plan to impose limits on blacks and Arab players in 2011. Moreover, placing the blame on the United States ignores the voices of black French writers who speak out on racism in France, as well as Africans, both on the continent and in the diaspora, who are having meaningful conversations about what this team means to us. For us, being African is worthy of celebration. So perhaps France should ask itself, what is so appalling about Africa that it must be erased in favor of French identity? Doing so fits the definition of white supremacy, or a reflection of white French fragility. Most likely it's both. It is true that the players have spoken about being proud of playing for France. One of them, Adil Rahmani, has talked about feeling both French and Moroccan. No one is trying to erase Frenchness, as Noah pointed out. We're saying that it's possible to celebrate both their Frenchness and their Africanness. French critics point out the fact that black French players are pro-France and demand that people listen to their own words. But they should pay attention to Ozil's decision to give up the German jersey for good, as should anyone who thinks that success and fame insulates immigrants and those with foreign roots from racism. I am German when we win, but I'm an immigrant when we lose, Ozil wrote. That's because despite paying taxes in Germany, donating facilities to German schools, and winning the World Cup with Germany in 2014, I'm still not accepted into society. The president of Bayern Munich, Uli Hoeneß, told Sportsbild that Germany will not miss him and that he has been playing shit for years. Hard to believe this, considering Ozil played in every World Cup game in 2014 and has racked up 40 assists and 23 goals in his 92 international appearances for Germany. He also received the German Football Ambassador Public Award in 2015, as well as an award for being a model of successful integration, even though he is German-born. Now, Germany has lost one of its great young players due to its hypocrisies and double standards on race. It's a shameful own goal on Germany's part. The questions about Ozil's loyalties to Germany and France And the question about Ozil's loyalty to Germany and France's emphasis on stomping out African identity in favor of Frenchness shows that when Europe speaks of integration, it's really rejecting multiculturalism in favor of assimilation, in which those who desire acceptance must abandon their roots. True integration confers responsibilities on the cultural majority to ensure equal treatment. Integration means the majority culture and political structures should end discrimination in job opportunities. True integration means immigrants and their children shouldn't have to rescue babies from buildings, sing the national anthem at every beck and call, or win international championships to be accepted as French, German, or Belgian. Ozil speaks for many diaspora people when he celebrates his hyphenated identity. I have two hearts, one German and one Turkish, he wrote. During my childhood, my mother taught me to always be respectful and to never forget where I came from. And these are still values that I think about to this day. It's sad to see that in 2018, the hearts of France and Germany seem too small to fully accept and celebrate the dual identities of immigrants and their sons and daughters, whether they be shopkeepers or soccer superstars. Karen Addier is the Washington Post's global opinions editor. She writes on international affairs and social issues. Previously, she reported from Curacao, Ghana, and Nigeria. We'll finish up with some news in brief. Tribe says feds support bill protecting tribes' reservation land. Mashpee, Massachusetts. The Mashpee Wampanoag tribe is touting support from a key federal agency in its bid to protect its reservation lands. The Cape Cod tribe on Tuesday highlighted written testimony submitted to Congress by Bureau of Indian Affairs Acting Director Darryl LaCunte, stating the agency's support of legislation enshrining the 321-acre reservation into law. But the mayor of Brockton, Massachusetts, and other opponents submitted testimony critical of the proposal, saying the bill serves to benefit a Malaysian casino company partnering with the tribe on a planned casino. The testimony was submitted ahead of a House Committee on Natural Resources hearing on the proposal. The U.S. Department of Interior is reviewing a 2015 decision granting the lands to the tribe in a case being closely watched by tribes across the country. Well, that's all the time we have now for the New Bedford Standard Times. This is Jeff, and I will be back next week.
You've just heard news stories from the New Bedford Times. Please stay tuned for more programming.
Coming soon from the Talking Information Center, join reader Jack Garrity as he presents the book, The Unnatural World, The Race to Remake Civilization in Earth's Newest Age by David Biello. With the historical perspective of The Song of the Dodo and the urgency of Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth, The Unnatural World chronicles a disparate band of unlikely heroes. These scientists, billionaires, and ordinary people are all working towards saving the best home humanity is ever likely to have. What is the threat? It is us. In a time when a species dies out every 10 minutes, when summers are getting hotter, winters colder, and oceans higher, some people still deny mankind's effect on the earth. A futurist ray of hope amid the usual denial and despair. As said by Esquire, The Unnatural World examines the world we have created and analyzes the glimmers of light emerging from the efforts of incredible individuals seeking to change our future. Instead of a world without us, this history of the future shows how to become good gardeners, helping people thrive along with an abundance of plants, animals, all the exuberant profusion of life on Earth, a better world with us. The current era of humans need not be the end of the world, and according to Scientific American, Bielo describes what we have done to alter our planet and what we should do in the future. The Unnatural World, The Race to Remake Civilization in Earth's Newest Age by David Bielo will air on the Select Mix Book Hour beginning July 30th and ending August 20th.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
This is volunteer reader Dave Russell broadcasting from Worcester, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Coming up next from the Talking Information Center, news stories from the Cape Cod Times.
This is the Cape Cod Times. Today is Wednesday, July 25th, 2018. Headlines. Interior official weighs in on tribe's land bill. Acting director says Indian Affairs not taking a position. By Tanner Stenning. The U.S. Department of the Interior on Tuesday took no position during a congressional hearing on legislation that would secure the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe's reservation lands, despite indications earlier in the day that the agency was prepared to back the effort. Darrell LeCount, acting director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, testified before the House Subcommittee on Indian, Insular, and Alaska Native Affairs that the department is not prepared to take a position on the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe Reaffirmation Act, but said he will encourage speeding up his department's review of the status of the tribe's land. The bill was introduced by U.S. Representative William Keating, Democrat of Massachusetts, earlier this year. A twin bill has been introduced in the Senate. The bill would affirm a 2015 decision by the Interior Department to take 321 acres of land into trust on behalf of the tribe, effectively ending a legal challenge that threatens the reservation. That legal challenge was brought by neighbors of a proposed $1 billion casino project on reservation land in Taunton. The lawsuit was successful in federal court, where a judge remanded the Interior Department's decision back to the federal agency for further consideration. During his own testimony before the subcommittee, Mashpee Wampanoag Tribal Chairman Cedric Cromwell said the disestablishment of our reservation would have a devastating financial impact on the tribe, saying it would be the first instance of the U.S. government severing its trust relationship with the tribe since the termination era, a period from the 1940s to the 1960s, during which Congress pushed to end tribal independence by removing federal protections. Lawmakers question LeCount about whether the Interior Department is contemplating taking the land out of trust. Asked if the federal agency would rule against the tribe, LeCount offered vague assurances that it would not. Not to my knowledge, LeCount said. It is in trust right now. LeCount appeared to suggest that the agency is still working toward a solution, but did not offer details. A copy of LeCount's prepared remarks that were changed before the hearing stated the Interior Department supported the legislation. The department supports this legislation, which would clarify the Secretary's authority to acquire land in trust for the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, providing certainty for the tribe and the interior, and finality for all interested parties, according to LeCount's remarks, as originally prepared. The sentence was removed before his appearance. The town of Mashpee has moved forward with hiring David Mullen Jr. to lobby for the bill's passage, according to Selectman John Cahalan. Mullen served as a senior attorney on the U.S. Senate Committee on Indian Affairs and as chief counsel at the National Congress of American Indians, according to biographical information on his firm's website. LeCount's testimony comes as the Interior Department is trying to determine whether the tribe qualifies to have land taken into trust under a different legal category than the one rejected by a federal judge in 2016. Nedra Darling, a Bureau of Indian Affairs spokeswoman, did not respond to questions about the status of the tribe's land or the change in LeCount's remarks. The department's authority is delegated by Congress, which has the ultimate authority over Native American affairs, according to legal experts. Michelle Littlefield, a plaintiff, wrote a letter to committee lawmakers saying that the Interior Department, in continuing to weigh an outcome that would overturn the federal ruling, would put over 100 years of case law at risk. Judge William Young ruled in 2016 that the Secretary of Interior lacked the authority to take the land into trust for the tribe because they were not under federal jurisdiction at the time of the passage of the Indian Reorganization Act in 1934. We understand that while the committee has a responsibility to look after federally recognized tribes, it should not do so at the expense of the rule of law and the rights of other tax-paying citizens of this country, especially not through special interest legislation to benefit a foreign entity that is using a sovereign nation to increase the financial gain of Malaysian investors, Littlefield wrote. Cromwell has repeatedly condemned the lawsuit, saying it was funded by an out-of-state gaming interest that seeks to undermine the tribe's fight to secure its reservation land. That casino developer, Neil Blum, is backing a casino proposal in Brockton that recently re-emerged when Mass Gaming and Entertainment asked the Massachusetts Gaming Commission for a second review of its application. Cromwell called the federal ruling against the tribe a technical legal issue. The tribe was mysteriously removed from a list of tribes under federal jurisdiction many decades ago, he said. Mashpee had always been there, Cromwell said. We had the first Indian district of the United States. Support for Keating's legislation has garnered support from tribal nations across the country. Training focuses on drivers using drugs. Cape Police Learning to Navigate New World of Recreational Marijuana by Ethan Genter. Hyannis. As recreational marijuana laws start to roll out across the state, Cape Police are training to handle drivers who roll up on the roads. The legalization of recreational marijuana has raised concerns among law enforcement about how to determine if people are operating under the influence of marijuana and other drugs, Barnstable Police Sergeant Eric Driftmeyer said. On Tuesday, Barnstable hosted the Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Enforcement course, a 2-day class offered to 20 officers from on and off Cape departments, as well as a Cape Assistant District Attorney. Taught by State Trooper Sean Reardon and Dennis Police Sergeants Richard Troy and Cleve Daniels, the class gives officers a working knowledge of drugs, their effects on drivers, and how to recognize symptoms of drug use. The class is a step below the long-standing Drug Recognition Expert Program, which is a 2-week course that mixes pharmaceutical, medical, and courtroom courses for police, but one step higher than the standard field sobriety class officers take. Reardon has been conducting the course, which is free to officers, more than usual lately. I think OUI drugs is becoming as big of an issue as OUI alcohol, he said. Police use 3 standard sobriety tests, but they were developed over the years for alcohol arrests, not drugs. The tests have a pretty high accuracy rate in determining whether a driver is drunk, Troy said, but aren't as good when people are impaired by drugs. Plus, the most accurate, the gaze test, can't be used in Barnstable County courts in testimony for operating under the influence cases. There also is no hard line in the sand for drug cases like there is for alcohol, Driftmeyer said. Drivers can't drive with a .08 blood alcohol level or higher. That level can be tested with a breathalyzer and used as evidence in court. We're not going to have a chemical test for drugs, at least in the near future, Driftmeyer said. That means police officers need to make sure they pay attention to other indicators before, during, and after the sobriety tests, Reardon said. One telltale sign of drug use is the eyes, according to Reardon. Certain drugs can make the pupils as wide as dinner plates, he said, while others can turn them into pinpoints. We're looking at everybody's pupils all the time, he said. Cannabis also can cause the pupils to rebound, going back and slowly getting larger and smaller when a light is shown in person's eyes. The redness of eyes caused by cannabis is also a different type of bloodshot from alcohol, almost more like that of conjunctivitis. Because so many of the signs of drug use are similar to medical conditions, it's important for officers to ask and learn to check for conditions like diabetes or a stroke. This also helps build a credibility for officers in the courtroom if they can prove they know the difference between the two, Troy said. Officers in the class practiced field sobriety tests and watched videos of people under the influence of drugs to see how the body reacts. Provincetown police officer Tyler Dow and East End police officer Gregory Plant took the course and hoped they could bring back what they learned to their departments to help with drug arrests. You need to build a lot more around these cases, Dow said. A judge's judge. After 20 years on the bench in Barnstable Superior Court, Gary Nickerson hangs up his robes today. By Doug Fraser. Barnstable. As a boy on his grandfather's farm in Taunton, Barnstable Superior Court Judge Gary Nickerson always carried a fold-up magnifying glass in his back pocket. Every bug, every leaf got examined, he recalled recently as he leaned back in his chair at his courthouse office. As an adult, I still love the thrill of examining the humanity in front of me, Nickerson said. On Monday morning, I'll see something I've never seen before, even though today, on Friday, I think I've seen it all. After 20 years as a Superior Court judge, Nickerson, age 69, will retire in August, although his last day at work is today. Mandatory retirement age for Superior Court judges is 70. I'm not retiring because I'm unhappy. I'm retiring because I'm very happy with this job, he said. It's time for a fresh face, a fresh set of ideas. Colleagues say Nickerson, who also spent more than 2 decades as a prosecutor and defense attorney, is a unique combination of scientific curiosity, compassion, and broad experience. I wish we had 80 of him, said Judith Fabricant, Chief Justice of the Superior Court. He will be greatly missed. Fabricant, a judge in Suffolk Superior Court, oversees the state's 80 Superior Court judges. Everyone has come to view him as a judge's judge, as a lawyer's judge, as someone of great wisdom, even temperament, careful attention to the law and the facts and the needs of people in the cases he tries, she said. Nickerson's experiences on his grandfather's farm led him to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, graduating with a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture in 1972. But he had a keen interest in the environment, he said. After a professor suggested he pursue environmental law, Nickerson enrolled at Northeastern University's law school. Through its unique co-op program, he did working internships at Boston Edison, the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, and tried cases as an intern at the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office. Nickerson also won a fellowship at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution's Maine Policy Center, but in 1976, as a newly minted attorney, he was pulled back into the courtroom to serve for 7 years as an assistant district attorney under then District Attorney Philip Rollins. I am still, to this day, guided by what Phil Rollins taught me, which is that there are many people in front of the criminal courts who, whether due to intoxication, drug abuse, poverty, or other reasons, are there not because they set out to be criminals, but that they ended up being criminals, Nickerson said. If there's a way to help those people, Rollins said, do it, according to Nickerson. Then there are those genuinely evil people that need to be separated from society, Nickerson said. That's one thing Phil taught all assistant DAs, that it's our job to figure that out, to separate genuine evil from human frailty. After 7 years as an assistant district attorney, Nickerson went out on his own as a defense attorney. I wanted to experience the other side, he said. What makes a good defense attorney? Knowledge of the law, he said, preparation of the facts. For a long time, he was one of, if not the best, criminal defense attorneys on the Cape, known for his meticulous research, said Michael Trudeau, Cape and Island's first assistant district attorney. He was the go-to guy in Barnstable County, said Drew Segadelli, a prominent Cape defense attorney. He'd dissect the law and apply it. He didn't shout or pound the table. I think he's the kind of lawyer and judge that utilizes all of his life experiences, as varied as they are, in the courtroom, said attorney Edward Gargiulo, who in 40 years of practice has argued many civil cases before Nickerson. Civil cases are almost always complicated, requiring research and a mind that enjoys the details. He's a wonderful judge, always superbly prepared, with a knowledge of whatever you are appearing before him, knowing the applicable law better than you do, Gargiulo said. That attention to detail continued when he was appointed to Barnstable Superior Court in December of 1998 by Governor Paul Cellucci in a swearing-in ceremony in front of hundreds at the Sandwich High School auditorium in the town where he lived for more than 40 years until moving to Centerville a year ago. He looks at every issue, every case, from all dimensions, said Barnstable Superior Court Judge Robert Ruffo. He's fastidious about his legal research and he uses good old-fashioned books. Nickerson is gregarious and can disarm anyone with his keen sense of humor and quick wit, Ruffo noted, but in the courtroom he rigorously enforces decorum befitting the potentially life-altering impact of court decisions on defendants, victims, or plaintiffs, and on case law. He's authoritative with the proper temperament, sensitive to both sides and extremely thoughtful, said Ruffo. But he doesn't suffer fools, Ruffo added, and holds everyone, including attorneys, to account when he believes they are not being honest, are grandstanding, or have not done the same exacting level of preparation he expects of himself. He is relatively patient, but he knows how to run a courtroom, said Cape and Islands District Attorney Michael O'Keefe. He lets lawyers try their case, but makes appropriate interjection when justice requires. Nickerson is not shy about voicing his displeasure, and has drawn national attention on more than one occasion when someone steps over the line. In a 2004 murder trial, he ordered witness Talia Dunbar taken into custody after she finished her testimony and yelled, "I hope you fry in hell," at defendant Kevin Halliday. "This is a courtroom, not a street corner," he told Dunbar, barring her from the courthouse and releasing her only after she apologized. In July 2007, Nickerson had potential juror Daniel Ellis taken into custody and referred to the district attorney for prosecution after he made a cavalier remark that he was a liar and prejudiced against homosexuals and African Americans in an attempt to get out of jury duty. In a February 2011 decision in Bristol Superior Court, in which he dismissed charges against two men for a 2003 murder, Nickerson said the Bristol County District Attorney's Office and police had done sloppy work and that the grand jury had been sold shoddy merchandise. When Gina Clark appeared before him in July 2017 for not making progress on restitution, Nickerson showed his impatience. Clark was convicted in 2013 of 26 counts of larceny and 2 counts of fraud, along with other charges connected with her charity Touched by Angels, Inc. Why isn't she out there hustling for more? Nickerson asked when Clark's attorney said she couldn't work more than 20 to 30 hours a week. What's the deal with the ring? Nickerson asked her, noting she came to court dressed expensively, wearing jewelry. Enough nonsense, enough fancy clothes, enough fancy nails, Nickerson told Clark. It's time for these people to get their restitution. But it was the trial of Christopher McCowan for the 2002 rape and murder of Truro fashion writer Krista Worthington that elevated his particular trial skills to the national stage. My eyes were wide open during the McCowan trial, said Rufo. Nickerson said he felt the pressure to meet the demands of the public through the media while guaranteeing the defendant a fair trial in a case that had captivated the nation for 4 years, culminating in a 24-day trial. Nickerson met daily with the press to iron out problems, but enforced strict rules. No photographs or filming of jurors, even if accidental. Minimal noise from camera shutters and other technology, and no distractions from the audience or attorneys. He negotiated with trade union reps, restrained a hyper-competitive national media, and made strenuous efforts to insulate the jury from the madness and distractions that swirled around them. I will not allow this matter to become a spectacle or to become entertainment, he said at one point. Nickerson threatened to jail, fine, or hold reporters in contempt for inquiring about a juror who'd fallen ill. He also warned the audience to wear proper attire and remain serious throughout the trial. When a Cape Cod Community College student wore shorts to cover the trial in violation of his dress code, Nickerson had him brought before him in shackles to explain himself before being released. Worthington's father was chastised and left the courtroom for the day for urging prosecuting attorney Robert Welsh III to object while the trial was in progress. Nickerson reprimanded defense attorney Robert George for interrupting witnesses and stopped Welsh for asking what he believed were the wrong questions. He's going to keep the decorum in the courtroom, said Sagittarius, who was once fined $100 for being 10 minutes late returning from lunch. I paid it with a smile because I didn't dare garner any more wrath. Sagittarius admired Nickerson's courage in removing a juror from the McCowan trial who had been exchanging phone calls with a prisoner who had fathered her child and had an upcoming trial. He accused her of lying about the extent of their relationship. That takes significant fortitude, he said. You can get a case flipped on such moves. The ruling did result in an appeal questioning whether there was a racial component to the jury's guilty finding. O'Keefe said he admired the way Nickerson handled the initial ruling, denying a new trial that resulted in an appeal before the Supreme Judicial Court that was also rejected. That ruling will stand for a long time to come, and how a court should explore and handle an allegation of some racial impropriety in a jury, O'Keefe said. Although not a Cape native, Nickerson's connection to the region is strong. His father was a factory worker, and his family would come to what was known as Little Taunton near Mayflower Beach in Dennis during the 2 weeks in July when the factories shut down each summer. I remember in college going to Sandwich and watching the fireworks over Shawnee Pond, and I said, wow, this is the town I want to live in, he said. Contemplating retirement, Nickerson has already planned out his next venture. He's assisting with an archaeological dig at what is believed to be the original Nickerson homestead in Chatham. I went down for a trial, I guess, on my ability to dig and sift, and I guess I passed muster and they invited me back, he said. Mom back on her feet after mortgage help. A woman in her late 30s with a 3-year-old child was just getting her home-based preschool off the ground when she fell and broke her leg. After learning she would need extensive surgery to repair the break, she was forced to close the school during her recuperation. The woman, newly separated from her husband and not receiving child support at the time, was notified of her responsibility for a business loan she had co-signed with her husband. She said she always made sure her son had food, but sometimes she would go without to stay financially afloat. With help from the Needy Fund to make her mortgage payment, this woman is now literally back on her feet with her school reopening this summer. There are many human service agencies offering assistance to those in need, but the Cape Cod Times Needy Fund has been helping with a host of immediate, short-term emergencies such as food, rent, medical costs, and other basic expenses since 1936. No cash is given to Needy Fund recipients. Instead, the agency pays vendors through a voucher program. The case described above was provided by the Needy Fund on condition of anonymity. Donations, which are tax-deductible, may be made at needyfund.org, or checks can be made payable to the Cape Cod Times Needy Fund and mailed to Cape Cod Times Needy Fund, P.O. Box 36, Hyannis, Mass. 02601, or dropped off at the Times offices at 319 Main Street in Hyannis. Curfew ordered for Dennis man facing sex trafficking charges by Wheeler Copperthwaite. Barnstable. A local businessman charged with sex trafficking will remain free, but he will have a curfew after his arraignment Tuesday morning in Barnstable Superior Court. Patrick McDowell, 52, of Dennis, must be home every day by 8 p.m. and cannot leave his house again until 5 a.m., according to an order by Superior Court Judge Gary Nickerson. He does not want McDowell out trolling late at night, considering the allegations that McDowell had his friends procure women for him to have sex with, Nickerson said. I'm not thinking he has to be in a bed. It's that he needs to be in his own, Nickerson said. To be blunt, he shouldn't be out after 8 p.m. McDowell pleaded not guilty to 13 counts, 5 counts of trafficking of a person for sexual servitude, 6 counts of sex for a fee, and 1 count each of conspiracy to commit trafficking of a person for sexual servitude and assault and battery. Assistant Attorney General Nancy Rothstein alleged McDowell paid his friend Jaquan Montero, 24, of Dorchester, to find him women to have sex with, as well as women whom he could watch having sex with other men. The victims told officers that they had sex with McDowell for money and went to his house for that express purpose, according to police reports. On Friday, Montero pleaded not guilty to charges of trafficking of a person for sexual servitude, deriving support from prostitution, conspiracy to commit trafficking of a person for sexual servitude, and a misdemeanor assault and battery. Nickerson set Montero's bail at $10,000 cash. 2 of the alleged victims were 17 at the time of the incidents. 2 other co-defendants, Jennifer Jordan and Mirabelle Billings, both 19, are charged with conspiracy to commit trafficking of a person for sexual servitude. Jordan is also charged with intimidating a witness. Court officers arrested Billings on Monday when she appeared in court. She had previously missed her arraignment on Friday afternoon. Rothstein alleged McDowell asked Billings to introduce him to her friends. Every person she brought over, with the exception of 1, was addicted to unspecified drugs. McDowell allegedly paid some of them with drugs for sex, Rothstein said. During McDowell's arraignment, Nickerson asked why the conditions of release should be looser for him than Montero, including no GPS ankle bracelet. They are totally different defendants with totally different backgrounds, said Kevin Reddington, McDowell's attorney. McDowell's bail had previously been set at $40,000 cash only in Suffolk County, where he was arraigned on similar charges. No curfew was imposed by the Suffolk County Superior Court judge. It had previously been set at $100,000, which he posted, but was reduced following a bail hearing on an unspecified date. After Nickerson imposed the curfew, Reddington tried to negotiate the time. Just do a 10 o'clock curfew, Reddington said. Nickerson asked where McDonald needs to be so late. Reddington said business dinners could easily stretch past 8 p.m. Make it business luncheons, Nickerson said. McDowell is the owner of PKM Contractors in Dennis. The cases in Suffolk and Barnstable counties will be consolidated, but she is not sure where yet, Rothstein said. McDowell was indicted in Suffolk Superior Court on 2 counts of trafficking of a person for sexual servitude, 2 counts of sex for a fee, and 1 count each of conspiracy to commit trafficking of a person for sexual servitude, posing a child in a state of nudity, enticement of a child, and dissemination of matter harmful to a minor.
You've just heard news stories from the Cape Cod Times. Please stay tuned for more programming.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
This is volunteer reader Leo Frappier, broadcasting from Worcester, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Coming up next from the Talking Information Center, it's the Senior Program, featuring a selection of articles from AARP Magazine, as well as other sources. Please stay tuned.
Hello, listeners. This is the Senior Program. Today I'm beginning with a read from the Icahn School of Medicine, Mount Sinai, July of 2018. Melanoma rate rises among seniors. More than 70,000 Americans are diagnosed with melanoma each year, and more than 9,000 die from it. A recent study reveals that melanoma rates are on the increase among older Americans. The study is from the Journal of American Medicine Association of Dermatology, March. It is first to focus on how this lethal form of skin cancer affects different age groups. And Arash Arafkan, MD, Assistant Clinical Professor of Dermatology at Mount Sinai, says that the data partly reflects the fact that melanoma is essentially an age-related disease. Seniors are more vulnerable because of cumulative sun exposure over decades, during which we underestimate the risks associated with sun exposure, and sunscreen was not widely used, he explained. He adds that another possible reason for the uptick is the fact that we are now more aware of skin cancer. They may be more likely to raise the alarm with their doctors if they develop suspicious skin lesions. Higher rates. For the study, researchers calculated the average annual percentage rate of melanoma incidences by 10-year age groups. The average melanoma rate per 100,000 people was about 32 for people age 45 to 54, but it increased to about 50 for those aged 55 to 64, and 82 for those aged 65 to 74. It spiked further to about 110 for those aged 75 to 84 before falling slightly in the oldest old. Your healthy suntan signals skin damage. Most of us like the healthy glow of the sun gives us, but the tan is anything but healthy. In fact, it is visible proof that your skin has been damaged. Sunlight contains radiation that attacks skin cells. You are at a particular risk for this damage if you are fair-skinned, freckle easily, and have blonde or red hair. But don't assume a dark complexion affords you a full protection. It may lower your risk somewhat, but it doesn't grant you immunity from skin cancer. Other skin cancer risk factors include a history of blistering sunburns, lots of moles, a previous history of skin cancer, and a family history of the disease. Keep in mind, too, that certain medications, including nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin and ibuprofen, Advil and Motrin, some antibiotics and diuretics can cause your skin sensitivity to the sun, raising your risk of sunburn and skin cancer. Where diuretics are concerned, a new study suggests that people who take hydrochlorothiazide which is commonly prescribed for high blood pressure, may be up to 7 times more likely to develop non-melanoma skin cancers than people who do not take it. Treating melanoma. Surgery is the first line of treatment for melanoma and typically removes the lesion along with 1 or 2 centimeters margin of the skin around it. Any skin cancer that occurs on the face is typically treated with more precise technique called MOHS, M-O-H-S's. It is a procedure during which cancer cells are surgically removed, a layer at a time. With each layer, then, the examined under a microscope to ensure that no abnormal cells remain. This method ensures that as little as healthy skin as possible is removed. Your doctor will also examine the lymph nodes near your melanoma to make sure there are no cancer cells present. Lymph nodes are small glands that occur throughout the body. If a cancer has spread, cells are typically presented in the lymph nodes. Melanoma that has spread may be treated using immunotherapy drugs that are designed to jumpstart the immune system in order to destroy cancer cells. Another possible treatment is targeted therapy, which is designed to harm cancer cells while leaving healthy cells intact. Protecting your skin. Detecting skin cancer is easier if you're familiar with your skin and can note new moles and changes to existing moles. Spend 15 minutes each month thoroughly checking your skin, including your scalp, genitals, and the soles of your feet, and your fingers and toenails in front of a full-length mirror in good light. It is recommended that you also get yourself checked over by a dermatologist once a year, every 6 months if you have skin risk factors for skin cancer. As well as your regular self-check, you should be taking steps to protect your skin from the sun. Stay in when the sun is at its strongest, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and apply a sunscreen with a minimum sun protective factor of SPF 30 before you go out, even if it's cloudy. Wear a wide-brim hat and that would cover your neck and stick to the shade as much as you can. What you can do: follow the ABCDE rules when it is examining suspicious moles. A, symmetry. The shape of one half doesn't match the other. B, border. A ragged or blurred edge. C, color. An uneven color. It could be shades of black, brown, red, white, or blue. D, diameter. A significant change in size that takes the diameter of the mole to more than about 1/4 of an inch. And E, the last, evolving. Anything changing or evolving needs to be seen by a dermatologist. That concludes that article. I'm now reading from the Arthritis Advisor of July 2018. Healing a damaged rotator cuff. The cuff of tendons and muscles in your shoulder takes a beating throughout your life, in which also may lead to damage. Aching pain on the outside of your upper arm when you reach over your head or out to the side suggests problems with the muscles and tendons in your shoulder called the rotator cuff. In addition to pain during the day, rotator cuff injuries also tend to cause pain at night, whether lying on your shoulder or not. An anatomy. A group of 4 muscles originate on the shoulder blade and attached to the upper arm bone by the way of tendons. The tendons and muscles come together to form a cuff of tissue attached to the arm bone. The role of the rotator cuff is to help you rotate and elevate your arm over your head and give you strength and power in the shoulder when you reach to the side. The shoulder is a ball and socket joint, and the rotator cuff also helps to keep the bony ball at the top of the humerus centered in the socket in the shoulder blade. Like all muscles and tendons that get heavy use, the rotator cuff can suffer wear and tear over time. What can go wrong? The rotator cuff is susceptible to a variety of problems. It may become inflamed and irritated, a condition called tendinitis. It becomes chronic. It is called tendinosis. The tendons of the rotator cuff can also tear, either partially or completely. A sudden injury from a fall or an accident can cause the rotator cuff to tear. Or it may be more of a degenerative condition that occurs gradually over time, which is typically seen in people in their 60s and 70s. The distinction is important because treatment for a torn rotator cuff differs depending on the cause. Because degenerative tears occur slowly, the shoulder has adapted and compensated. With traumatic injury, the tendon retracts and can get stuck in a fixed position if you wait too long to fix it. In the case of a sudden injury, imaging studies will be done without delay. A traumatic rotator cuff is a surgically urgency for most people, and repair procedures will be performed within 4 to 6 weeks. Surgery is not the first step for degenerative rotator cuff tears. Conservative care first. Treatment for non-traumatic shoulder pain starts conservatively with rest, ice, anti-inflammatory drugs, and physical therapy. After 6 to 8 weeks, you should be feeling better. If the symptoms persist, the next step will be an imaging study, such as a magnetic resonance imaging or ultrasound. If the problem is tendinitis without tear, surgery won't help. For a small tear, a procedure can be performed to shave off the frayed portion of the tendon. A large tear is more than half of the thickness of the tendon, can be surgically repaired. The surgery is performed with minimal invasive arthroscopic technique. Recovery is typically quite long. It can take 6 months to a year to regain function and mobility. What you can do: rest. Avoid activities that worsen symptoms such as reaching upward, carrying heavy objects, or other activities that stress your sore shoulder. Ice. Apply ice to your shoulder for 20 minutes once a day in the evening. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. People who can tolerate drugs like that can try a short course of ibuprofen, Advil, Motrin, or naproxen, Aleve. Physical therapy. This is a cornerstone of treatment. Physical therapy is aimed at reducing inflammation and retraining the rotator cuff and surrounding muscles to compensate for the damage. And the last is the corticosteroid injection. For severe pain that isn't helped with these measures, an injection can be added to the regime. That concludes that article. I am now reading from the UCLA Healthy Years of July 2018. Healthy aging, reduce stress, and plug into life. A daily diet of news can be stressful. Take a break, turning out of the news and into your life. Wildfires, mudslides, government shutdowns, school shootings, and more. We're glued to our phones, our televisions, in quest for information. But the barrage of bad news may leave us feeling tense, sad, anxious, and preoccupied. Overexposure to the news can lead to something called vicarious trauma, a term introduced in the 1990s to describe the experiences of therapists, rescue workers, and medical professionals. The American Counseling Association describes vicarious trauma as a state of tension and preoccupation with the stories of trauma experiences described by clients. Vicarious trauma is also sometimes referred to as compassion fatigue. The sheer volume of stressful events can make people feel pessimistic, or fearful. Consequences of stress. Stress results from being in situations, real or vicarious, that are scary, life-threatening, or seemingly out of your control. Fight, flight, or freeze reactions kick in along with a cascade of biological chemicals. Under the right conditions, these internal chemical changes can be life-saving. For example, if you are chased by a tiger, the adrenaline surge powers cause your muscles to help you get away. But in today's world, the tiger can be a lot of things, including the reporting of catastrophic events that make you feel helpless, hopeless, and fearful. Constantly filling your consciousness with news and information that makes you feel this way can lead to chronic stress. And stress can damage the body by suppressing the immune system, digestive, sleep, and reproduction systems, which may cause them to stop working normally. Different people experience stress in different ways. For example, some people experience mainly digestive symptoms, while others may have headaches, sleeplessness, sadness, anger, or irritability. People under chronic stress are also prone to more frequent and severe viral infections, such as flu or common cold. The negative impact of chronic stress on the cardiovascular system has been studied for quite some time. With stress comes an increase in heart rate and stronger contractions of the heart muscles. Blood pressure increases to send more blood to the areas of the body that need to respond to a threat. For example, leg muscles slam on the brakes in a sudden traffic jam. With chronic or repeated stress, there is an increased risk of hypertension, heart attack, or stroke. Stress can also increase inflammatory responses that affect cholesterol levels. In postmenopausal women, protective levels of estrogen drop, putting women at even greater risk for stress-related heart problems. Overeating and overdrinking are also other consequences of too much stress. These actions are misguided attempts to calm the body and mind. But mindlessly munching on comfort foods like salty, high-fat chips, sugar-laden cookies, and drinking alcohol to excess will only lead to greater health problems. Overcoming news overload. While everyone has a different method for coping with daily stress, the following suggestions are offered. 1. Increasing leisure activity that you find pleasant. Get more physical exercise and maintain a consistent sleep schedule. For example, the balance of self-care in light of the vicarious negative experience is crucial to give your mind and body time to digest and accommodate the upsetting news. 2. When feeling overwhelmed, social support is important. Joining a book club, a social group, or a political action organization may provide much-needed validation as an opportunity to express your emotions and get support from others. 3. Gain a sense of control by doing good. For instance, attending a local rally, making a donation, or volunteering your time to help others can counteract feelings of helplessness. 4. Limit your exposure to news coverage. Engage only at certain times of the day or certain days of the week. It may be helpful to limit your sources of media information. For example, you may want to read an online newspaper, but not scroll through Twitter. As we continue adapting to the ever-increasing speed of the news cycle, it is important to take a moment to explore the impact it is having on how you feel, behave, and think, and how to think of better taking care of yourself. I'm now reading from the AARP magazine of July-August 2018. The best places to live for under $40,000 a year. These towns boast These towns boast lower-cost homes, safe streets, great parks and restaurants, healthy economies, and access to urban adventures. This article is by Sarah Mahoney. First is San Marcos, Texas. It is 32 miles outside of Austin. The population is 62,000. The median home price is $197,500. They have 232 sunny days a year. The vibe is hill country's low-key charmer. Freebies that count are concerts take place in the park every Thursday during the summertime. The best way to spend $10 is enchiladas at Herbert's Taco Hut. Urban getaways are Austin is 31 miles and San Antonio is only 40 miles. And the sales tax, however, is at 8.25%. Accent on nature, ethnic diversity, natural beauty, and Texas tradition create the perfect mix. One of Texas's oldest towns, San Marcos, is full of life. For one thing, environmentalists fiercely defend its natural beauty and wildlife. As for nightlife, the town bars and live music scene helped launch the careers of George Strait and Stevie Ray Vaughan. Multi-million-dollar downtown redevelopment echoes the historic character of the town square. Pull on your cowboy boots for a stroll, or lace up your sneakers and explore the 1,200 acres of parks. Plus, the fares of local buses are half off for older riders. The San Marcos Activity Center, which charges seniors $51 for an annual membership, offer group hikes, sack lunch socials, adult ed classes, and Golden Sweethearts Ball. The town of 40% Hispanic has stayed true to its Mexican roots, says Rosina Ruiz Valley, 61, president of the Centro Cultural Hispano de Marcos. Among its classes, traditional dances and healthy cooking. Valley is an adjunct professor at Texas State, says that while she and her husband, David, 64, plan to downsize, they are eyeing new condos in town. They love San Marcos River, which is 72 degrees all year, drawing swimmers and tubers. And since driving to two big cities, it is easy, San Marcos says it's just the right blend. Lakeside living in Canandaigua, New York, 25 miles outside of Rochester. The population is 10,400. The median home price is $191,600. They have 165 sunny days a year, and the vibe is four-season fun. And the freebies that count are check out the Pioneer Kitchen exhibit at the Ontario County Historical Museum. And the best way to spend $10 is sample local vintage at New York Kitchens, the city's award-winning wine and culinary center. An urban getaway, Rochester is 25 miles away, and the sales tax there is 7.5. Lakeside living. Enjoy local wines, landmarks, and four-season of outdoor activities. This city, encompassing the downtown area, is surrounded by towns of the same name, home to 10,000 people. With 19th century Queen Anne homes, antique shops, and boutiques, it is a place with postcard appeal. Shoppers can visit 140 businesses downtown. Tourist attractions and festivals entertain residents and provide seasonal jobs. Pristine Canandaigua Lake lures boaters from the region. The city rates high on clean air measurements. Because of the Finger Lakes' robust wine industry, foodies have made this their gay enclave. Lovers of casual fare flock to Wegmans. It's offered a covered patio, live music, chef-prepared meals, and antique car shows. Residents also appreciate 4 seasons of play, hiking trails past waterfalls. From spring through fall, there are regional wine festivals. Winter is busy with an annual Christkin market, averaging 66 inches of snow a year, and the area is a paradise for alpine and Nordic skiers, as well as snowboarders. Healthcare includes award-winning University of Rochester Thompson's Health Center with a 113-bed hospital. It is affiliated with the top-ranked Strong Hospital, 30 minutes away. The YMCA, which offers reduced rates for older adults, has activities ranging from aquatics to Payo. Another selection in this article is Duluth, Georgia, 30 miles outside Atlanta. The population is 29,300. The population of the median housing is $209,600. They have 218 sunny days a year, and the vibe is downtown home diversity. In the freebies, see the galleries at Jacqueline Casey's Hugdon's Center for Art and Learning. The center also offers classes such as traditional Korean pottery, calligraphy, and soap making at reasonable prices. And the best way to spend $10 is head to Crave Pie Studio for a serving of coconut cream or seasonal peach. And the urban getaway is Atlanta is only 30 miles away, and the sales tax there is 6%. Symphony of cultures, blending backgrounds, generations, cuisines, diversion, and musical tastes. Crime rates here are well below the national average, and the city is committed to growing smarter and safer with high-tech investments such as the use of license plate cameras that quickly spot stolen cars. Duluth, Georgia, is focusing on increasing its walking ability. It has poured millions into multi-generational gathering spaces, including a new city hall, splash pad, and Town Green, which features events such as the Food Truck Fridays, Flicks on the Bricks. And while the city works to attract millennials, it offers plenty for older residents. Its 50 and Beyond program provides tennis and walking club, plus organized bridge, canasta, and mahjong for just $20 a year. Located in Gwinnett County the most diverse county in southeast Duluth, Georgia, is home to a growing mix of cultures and ethnicities. Roughly 10% of residents are Korean American. When I'm outside gardening, so are my neighbors, African Americans, Caucasians, Asians, says Joy Thompson, 64. The technology consultant moved there from Massachusetts with her 3 children. Thompson also says it is easy to get involved. Rainbow Village, with its unique approach to solving homelessness, has volunteering opportunities, as does a local art center. But Duluth, Georgia's strongest appeal may be to music lovers. Paul McCartney and Khalid are among the performers who have appeared here at the 13,000-seat Infinite Energy Center. Eddie Owens presents, based a 260-seat Red Clay Music Foundry, and hosts a local artist and also a music school. I'm now reading from the AARP Bulletin of July-August 2018. Your Health. My surprising new friend. A pilot program suggests voice-activated technology might help ease isolation and loneliness among some older adults. This article is by Christina Ianzito. One of the most popular characters today at Weinberg Place, a senior housing community in Baltimore, is named Alexa. Alexa, tell me a joke, says Alva Holcomb, 71, to the amazing Amazon Echo in her studio or apartment on a recent Sunday morning. Did you hear about the pig that joined the Royal Shakespeare Company? Alexa replies. He is a natural Hamlet. Holcomb chuckles appreciatively. She is one of more than 170 residents here in 4 other affordable housing complexes in the Baltimore and Washington, D.C. area who have been given an Amazon smart speaker as part of the AARP Foundation's Social Connected Voice-Activated Technology program. The goal of the program, which has been in a testing phase since early last year, is to determine whether voice-activated technology can help older adults fight isolation and loneliness. Both are serious risk factors for a range of health problems, including dementia. According to one study, loneliness can shave several years off a person's life expectancy. Initial observations suggest that the program has promise. The banter between the human and the machine seems to help residents feel more connected, says Lisa Budlow, Chief Operating Officer of Comprehensive Housing Assistance Incorporated, which owns some of the participating facilities, along with the National Health Foundation, and it is collaborating with the AARP Foundation on the project. Just talking to it actually producing that positive emotional response that can help combat loneliness. Alexa also allows its user to access their community activities calendar, hear the news, listen to their favorite music and audiobooks, and set reminders to take their medications. Maybe just as important, the device allows users to bond with each other over cool new things they discovered it can do. Organizers note that the program is not particular about the brand of device that is used. AARP Foundation has no formal arrangement with Amazon. The challenge has been to get residents, many of whom have minimal experience with smartphones or wireless internet, past their initial resistance to the technology. It helps to have an influential resident championing the program. At Weinberg Place, Shirley Crowder, 70, helps others set up and troubleshoot their devices. She assures them that Alexa isn't listening to everything they do. People always bring that up, and I try to explain Alexa is sleeping until you wake her. Crowder says, who uses a wheelchair and has set up her device to do many things that would otherwise be difficult, such as turning the lights off and on command. Crowder says that she especially is appreciative that Alexa, during a series of recent illnesses, when I was down and sick, Alexa was my best friend. Other program participants have grown attached to their devices as well. It helps me a lot because I don't get out that often, says Rhonda Williams, 67, who uses a breathing tube for chronic obstruction pulmonary disease, and today wears a Long Live the King Michael Jackson t-shirt. Williams says that she often asks Alexa to play Michael Jackson's Station or slow jazz on the Pandora radio. When she wants soothing background noise, she'll ask for the sound of a waterfall or rain. Some residents now, including Crowder, are being trained to teach their neighbors. Organizers hope the pilot can be expanded as enthusiasm and understanding grow. If you get people over the initial barriers, Bundlow says, they adapt to it pretty quickly. The growing impact of isolation. More than 800 million adults aged 50 and older are affected by isolation. Isolation is when someone is physically or emotionally disconnected from friends, family, and community. It is different from loneliness, which describes how people perceive their situation. Prolonged isolation is increasingly recognized as a risk factor for poor health, an impact equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, according to the recent study. The AARP Foundation has several programs underway to address isolation among older Americans. To learn more, take a quiz to determine your local loved one's isolation risk. Go to the AARP Foundation's website, connect2affect.org, and that's connect to the number AFFECT.org. And this concludes the reading of the senior program for today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Senior Program, brought to you from the Talking Information Center. If you would like to hear any of the information from this program again, please visit our website at ticnetwork.org.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
Hi, this is volunteer reader Misty Tyler, broadcasting from Marshfield, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Please stay tuned to the Talking Information Center. Selected readings from National Review are headed your way next.
Here we are together again for another look at National Review magazine. I'm glad you could make it. Happy you're here on the Talking Information Center, which is the hub of the Massachusetts Reading Network. Now let's begin today with an article written by Robert Verbruggen for National Review magazine. It has a headline that says, "Redefining Disability. It shouldn't be an all-or-nothing proposition." An odd thing has been happening since the middle of 2014. That's according to a recent analysis of Census Bureau data from the economist Ernie Tedeschi. The number of prime age, 25 to 54 years of age, the number of prime age Americans who are out of the workforce and say that they do not work because they're disabled, that number has declined about 7%, reversing a trend that had been in place for decades. The disabled have become more likely to rejoin the workforce and less likely to leave it to begin with. The Social Security Disability Insurance, the SSDI rolls, show a similar pattern. Peaking in May of 2014, the 1 month in history they topped 11 million, having almost tripled since the mid-1980s. And as of May, they stood at about 10.3 million. And the shift in the trend line has been so dramatic and unexpected that it's caused confusion about when exactly the beleaguered program will run out of money. A 2016 report from the program's trustees predicted that 2023 would be the year of doom, and last year's report put it at 2028, and this year's report says 2032. Either working-age Americans got a lot healthier all of a sudden, or in reality there are jobs that can accommodate a lot of these individuals, especially when the economy is booming. Unemployment is about as low as it's gotten in half a century, and companies are scrambling to find help. These new developments, aside from being great news in themselves, are just the latest pieces of evidence for a proposition that ought to be common sense. Disability, so-called. Disability is a category with fuzzy boundaries. Many people have ailments that pose an obstacle to work, but need not prevent them from working entirely. And this is a reality that our disability programs largely fail to recognize. At minimum, this failure reduces work for a significant number of enrollees who are capable of it. At most, it may have substantially contributed to a shocking decades-long decline in labor force participation among prime-age men, and since the turn of the century, prime-age women, too. Either way, it needs to be fixed. Even as, for now, a strong economy is pulling many off the disability rolls all by itself. In theory, SSDI, the nation's biggest disability program, but not the only one, focusing on those below retirement age and with a significant work history. In theory, SSDI is not supposed to cover borderline cases at all. To qualify for benefits, people must be unable to perform any substantial gainful activity that would pay even $1,180 a month, or $14,160 per year. That's roughly the income from a full-time minimum wage job, whether in the previous field of employment or in another field they could plausibly enter. In addition, their condition must be expected to last at least a year or until death. It is inevitable that such decisions will be subjective to an extent, though, and since the program standards were loosened in the 1980s, ailments that are difficult to verify have accounted for a rising share of awards. Today, more than half of SSDI recipients have mental health or musculoskeletal conditions such as joint pain, and the judgments of applicants' personal physicians have taken on a greater role in the process. The share of working-age adults who were on the program grew from 2.2% in the late 1970s to 4.4% in 2013. Population aging does account for much of this growth, but far from all of it. Experts broadly agree that disability programs can discourage work. In a review of the evidence earlier this year, the University of Maryland economists Catherine G. Abraham and Melissa S. Kearney drew attention to several rigorous studies of the question. In particular, those looking at situations where applicants were assigned to disability examiners or appeals judges who varied in their leniency, allowing researchers to see what happened when similar applicants were denied or were given benefits. One study suggested that for the 23% of applicants with marginal health conditions, meaning they might get benefits or not, depending on how lenient the examiner was, for the 23% of those applicants with marginal health conditions, receiving benefits reduced employment by 28 percentage points. This implies that for every 100 people in this group granted benefits, 28 go on not to work who otherwise would have. There is strenuous disagreement, though, about exactly how much disability programs are to blame for the overall drop in labor force participation among prime-age men. In 1967, just 3% of these men were neither working nor looking for work, not unemployed as such, but out of the labor force entirely. In 2016, that number was 12%. And while women flooded into the workforce in the second half of the 20th century, since then they too have been slowly leaving. In a 2016 book on the topic, entitled Men Without Work, Nicholas Eberstadt of the conservative American Enterprise Institute noted survey data from 2013 indicating that 57% of prime-age men out of the workforce received disability benefits, whether from SSDI or other programs. That figure had risen from 38% in 1985. People tend to underreport their government benefits in surveys, so both of these numbers are likely low. As correlation does not prove causation, however, Eberstadt hedged his argument, claiming that whether or not rising disability receipt caused men's flight from work, it has financed it. In a recent report for the Libertarian Mercatus Center, that's MERCATUS. In a recent report for the Libertarian Mercatus Center, Scott Winship took a different approach to the issue, looking at a Census Bureau survey question asking why prime-age men hadn't worked during the previous year and checking to see which explanations had risen the most over time. More than a third of the decline of work since 1968, well, that third was nothing to worry about. It resulted from men becoming more likely to be in school at later ages, to stay home to care for family, or to retire early. But 47% of the decline came from an increase in men saying they didn't work because they were disabled or sick. Winship pushes aside several explanations for the trends. Contrary to some claims from the left, wages for low-skilled men are not declining once inflation is properly accounted for, and just 9% of the drop comes from men who say they can't find a job. So it's not that there just isn't enough demand for these men's skills. It's also unlikely that men increasingly face health problems that make them unable to perform the available jobs. As workplace injuries are down, exercise has increased, rising obesity does not cause much labor force dropout, and employed men are taking less sick time than they used to. One plausible explanation Winship suggests in an accompanying essay. One plausible explanation could be that the payoff for not working has increased, including payoff through disability programs. This finds some support in a 2013 analysis from the Congressional Research Service, which noted that SSDI awards have grown faster than wages for low earners. Abraham and Kearney, though, present a different analysis, roughly echoing earlier findings by the Obama administration's Council of Economic Advisors, extrapolating from the research on SSDI and a disability program for veterans, including the above study estimating a 28% employment drop for 23% of the SSDI applicant population when granted benefits. They estimate that the expansion of these benefits caused a 0.2 of a percentage point decline in the employment to population ratio after 1999. As the name implies, this ratio measures whether people are employed, regardless of whether they're looking for work. It includes both sexes and everyone over 16 years old. The overall ratio declined 4.5 points, or 3.6 points, after changes in the age and sex composition of the workforce have been accounted for. So the benefits were not a major contribution to labor force dropout. Abraham and Kearney, charitably, call it not inconsequential. Far more important were the kinds of demand-side factors that Winship poo-poos. Expanded trade with China, which Abraham and Kearney credit with a full point of employment decline, and increased automation, which gets more than half a point. Whether disability reform can meaningfully combat the decline of work, or would just help the share of applicants who can work but struggle to, whether that disability reform can do so, it is imperative. The current system is structured in a dysfunctional way, in particular owing to the so-called all-or-nothing nature of the benefits, and struggling financially as well. In 2015, Congress was forced to transfer money from Social Security's retirement funds to SSDI, and as mentioned before, it will run out of money again in 2032. Last year, the Washington Post profiled an Alabama man struggling with the question of whether to apply for disability. He, in fact, had health problems, but was still able to work and was trying to find a job. And in cases such as this one, the decision to apply for disability is highly consequential. As it was noted in the Washington Post, most people aren't employed when they apply for disability. One reason applicant rates skyrocketed during the recession. Full-time employment would, in fact, disqualify most applicants, and once on it, few ever get off. Their ranks uncounted in the national unemployment rate, which does not include people on disability. The decision to apply, in many cases, is a decision to effectively abandon working altogether. For the severely disabled, this choice is, in essence, it's made for them. But for others, it's murkier. Aches accumulate, years pile up, job prospects diminish. In other words, after the difficult decision to apply, the next choice is simple. You can't work, because by doing so you'd prove you're capable of working. This begins during the lengthy approval process. Even rejected applications typically take 1 to 3 years with appeals, and this period, often right after someone becomes disabled, happens to be the most important time. It's an opportunity to avoid a spell of joblessness on one's resume and work out accommodations, if possible, with an employer in one's field. Then once an individual is accepted to the disability roles, earning beyond the modest so-called substantial gainful activity threshold, earning beyond that threshold can trigger a review to ensure he still qualifies for the program. To be fair, it's far from true that SSDI does nothing to encourage work. Beneficiaries are periodically re-evaluated to ensure they're still disabled, with more frequent reviews for those whose conditions are expected to improve. Those who are self-motivated to get back into the workforce have opportunities as well, including what is called a trial work period, in which they can earn money without losing their benefits, and an extended period of eligibility, in which their benefits can be restored after leaving the program for a job that didn't work out, and there's voluntary rehabilitation. Light work, providing income that falls below the substantial gainful activity threshold, is also allowed. But there are plenty of aspects to the program that should operate differently to ensure that those able to work have the incentives and the assistance that they need to do so. They range from obvious fixes, such as tightening up the definitions of mental health ailments and speeding up the application process, to far more technical tweaks. Eventually, the system needs an almost complete overhaul, though changes should likely begin with an extensive series of pilot programs to test the reforms, as the Trump administration has proposed in its 2018 budget. One of the most common suggestions is to award temporary or partial benefits to those who face genuine obstacles to work and yet are not completely unemployable. In a report late last year for the American Enterprise Institute, Tejesh Pradham and James C. Capretta proposed such a benefit that would be smaller than traditional SSI payments. Those payments vary case by case, but they average about $1,000 a month. They propose such a benefit that would be smaller than those traditional SSDI payments, but would not disappear as quickly when beneficiaries earned more at their jobs. Pradhan and Capretta would also mandate physical therapy or treatment for applicants who might benefit from it before their applications are even considered. By the same token, the disability pilot programs envisioned in Trump's budget proposal focus on early intervention, return-to-work initiatives that would help the individual worker maintain attachment to the labor force. A more controversial idea, though one with some bipartisan support in the think tank world, is to experience rate, so-called experience rate employer taxes. Whenever a worker went on disability, his former employer's taxes would go up. A similar rule is already in place for unemployment and workers' compensation benefits. This could be handled through the existing payroll tax system, or, as proposed in a 2010 report from the Liberal Center for American Process and the Brookings Institution's Hamilton Project, could be handled by bringing in private disability insurers who would have an obvious incentive to get people back to work. The idea is to give employers an extra reason to keep the workplace safe and to accommodate injured workers so they don't go on disability. However, a risk is that employers would refuse to hire workers who are more likely to go on disability in the future. And there's a question of fairness as well, because SSDI covers all disabilities that keep people from working, not just those stemming from injuries in the workplace itself. So the business lobby would likely push back. But it is an idea worth exploring, considering that the Netherlands has seen enormous success with reforms based on the concept of making employers more responsible for their workers' disability claims. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a bipartisan think tank focused on reducing the deficit and debt, has also dived into the debate, publishing an ongoing series of detailed proposals to shore up the program. Beyond ideas broadly similar to some of those outlined above, suggestions thus far have included subsidizing temporary employment to ease those with disabilities back into the workforce, as well as limiting what is called the double payments. Those double payments occur when people are eligible for unemployment in addition to disability insurance. Obviously, we're far from figuring out exactly what the ideal disability system would look like. We can be confident, though, that it bears little resemblance to our own, and that dramatic improvement should be a priority. Now let's look at a Richard Brookhiser piece for National Review, a little more tuned towards what we might think of as conversation. The headline on this City Desk article says, "Talk of Many Things." And Richard Brookhiser writes, well, who were they? Three men, friends for years. Where did they meet? In a restaurant on a side street behind the bar and down a curl of steps. And what sort of restaurant was it? Well, Italian, of course. For intimate conversation, nothing's better. Italians know that the art of living requires artfulness, good food, and lots of it, wine, ditto, but it requires even more than that, consideration. Hence all the studied acts of deference, those multiple mini violations of the 13th Amendment. You know, ciao, ciao, in Venetian dialect originally meant your slave, your slave. The musical recitation of specials, the making sure that the wine glass is always filled, the flip twist of the bottle at the end of the pour lest an errant drop escape. A good Italian restaurant, and they're all good at this. It's like a living jockey boy. Well, who led the conversation? George, master raconteur. And what was his subject? Well, politics, secular and clerical. And what ethnicity is he? He's Irish, of course. Italians, for all their artfulness, do not trust the world or politics. Family is all. Jews, being good modern philosophers, want to change the world, which makes them political. But being Jews, they want even more to understand it, which makes them intellectual. So many theories. And Protestants, white and black, don't even know what politics is, and rely instead on rules or on being cool. The Irish know that politics is made by men. They know that politics is all about whom you know. And whom does George know? In the capital of his church and the capital of his state, everybody. Politicians of both parties, reporters of every ideology, from Javert, the left-wing corpse exhumer, to Flying Monkeys, the right-wing fantasist, cardinals and bishops, monsignors and priests and writers. He spoke of this correspondence with Beau Brummel, recently deceased. He knows the living and the dead, especially the dead. There are so many more of them to know. Do you know someone who knew Al Smith? George does. And what does he know about the people he knows? What they have done, what they have said, what they think, whom they know, whose side they are on. Does everyone have a side? Yes. Your side and not your side. The right side and the wrong side. God's side and the other side. God willing, one is the same as two and three. And what does he not know about the people he knows? What they dream and what they eat, what they hum under their breath. Novelists' details. All that can be left for Beau Brummel. Is George showing off when he displays his knowledge? Or does he show off when he puts one foot in front of the other as he walks, or when he breathes, or when he orders an after-dinner drink after dinner rather than during the salad course? Of course not. Knowing people and their politics is his vocation, his jazz solo, his Gallic wars. It is what fascinates him and what he lives for. And what things did he say? Gossip. I told him I've given away my copy of Confessions of a Nun. I can get all the anti-clericalism I could ever need from him. I, a lapsed Methodist, find it positively embarrassing. I have chucked a Plunkett of Tammany Hall, too. It still goes on, but none of his gossip shall be recorded here. Advice. As an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. Now, that quote is from Proverbs 25:12. But things written remain, said Aaron Burr to his law clerks, and none of his advice shall be recorded here. And etiquette. This is recordable, and peak George. The Pope coming to the city, there was to be a Mass at the cathedral. Security and protocol required worshippers to be in their places 2 hours in advance. George, knowing whom he knows, had a front pew seat. In the old country, the gentry in their churches bought pews. In the land of the free, you get to the front pew, thanks to whom you have helped and worked with, and for how long. Also in the front pew, ex officio, was a very important politician and his consort. There were several things about George's pewmates, from the very important politician's opinions to the nature of his relationship, which were not ideal from George's point of view, but he knows the world, and of course he knew the politician. The lady was wearing a veil, a little uncomfortably, because it's certainly not current fashion. She had watched a YouTube video of a now-dead First Lady greeting a now-dead Pope, and she copied the look. Was she right? George assured her that she was perfectly right. With an hour still to go, a bishop arrived and took his seat before the altar. Excellencies could arrive fashionably late. George knew him and went to greet him. In an hour there would be a mass. But now was time to greet whom you knew. Behind George in the second pew was another very important politician, although more important in the nation's capital than in the States. The second very important politician is 5'9". George is 6'6". Someone had to twist his neck to see what was going on, and it wasn't George. I told him that he had been in one of the most dangerous places in America, between the second very important politician and the center of attention. Papal politics, current versus recent. Nothing of what George said about papal politics shall be recorded here. The evening spun along. George is writing a book. Not, I fear, a memoir in which to get everything down, but the latest in a row of Christmas trees on which he hangs what he knows, like ornaments. Encouraged by his example, I took an after-dinner drink, a sambuca, the size of a wading pool. The three of us were a little Italian, hopeless, and a little Jewish, writing, but also a little Irish, as we made plans to meet again. Say, listener, that was a nice little piece by Richard Brookhiser for National Review, and it brings us to this moment while we take a short break for this announcement, and this announcement is simple. I'm reading from National Review magazine, and you are listening to the Talking Information Center, the TIC network, which is the hub of the Massachusetts Reading Network. Well, let's move on to an article now, maybe less pleasant. It's written by Wesley Smith for National Review. Mr. Smith is a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute's Center on Human Exceptionalism, and he's also a consultant to the Patients' Rights Council. This article is entitled "The Wages of Death. Assisted Suicide Continues in Inexorable Expansion." Wesley Smith writes, 25 years ago, Newsweek published my first essay. In the wake of my friend's suicide under the influence of the Hemlock Society, I worried that some suicides would be prompted as a virtue if assisted suicide or euthanasia was ever accepted. Assisted suicide involves the doctors knowingly prescribing drugs for use in the patient's suicide. Euthanasia involves the doctors lethally injecting the patient. After that, I predicted eligibility for hastened death would expand to those who don't have a good quality of life, perhaps with the prospect of organ harvesting thrown in as a plum to society. I thought the essay would be uncontroversial. Then came the hate mail at a decibel level I had not experienced theretofore in my years of public policy advocacy. Euthanasia is a human right, I was told angrily. Correspondents hoped that I would die slowly of a painful cancer. I was called a religious fanatic, even though I had not mentioned religion, an alarmist, a fantasist, and a sadist. Nothing like what I feared would ever happen if society legalized assisted suicide or euthanasia, I was reassured. In the years since, however, doctor-administered lethal injection euthanasia has been legalized in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and Canada, and Luxembourg, Colombia. Legal doctor-assisted suicide has followed in 6 United States plus the District of Columbia. The latest, Hawaii, enacted its statute in early April. And as well as in the Australian province of Victoria and in Germany, where it was imposed by court order. In Switzerland, the previously little-known 1942 law permitting assisted suicide has become the basis for a flourishing so-called suicide tourism industry. Tens of thousands of people have now been legally killed or assisted in suicide by doctors in these jurisdictions. Not only have many of the worst fears that I expressed in 1993 been realized, but in some ways things have become more radical than I ever dreamed of. The Netherlands led the charge down the slippery slope. Assisted suicide was decriminalized in the 1970s, as long as doctors followed supposedly strict guidelines, and the categories of those eligible to be killed expanded steadily thereafter. That process has accelerated, especially since formal legalization in 2002. Currently, more than 6,000 people die in the Netherlands by euthanasia and assisted suicide each year. Killable people now range from the terminally ill and the chronically ill, such as a woman with serious tinnitus, to people with disabilities, such as people with paralysis and chronic alcoholics, dementia patients who ask to be euthanized in advance directives, the elderly with non-life-threatening health concerns or early dementia, and even 83 mentally ill patients in 2017. According to the medical journal JAMA Psychiatry, in recent years, depressive disorders were the primary issue in 55% of Dutch mental illness euthanasia cases. And babies born with serious disabilities, such as spina bifida, or with terminal conditions, are lethally injected under a neonatal euthanasia protocol. And there have been many clear cases of abuse. Euthanized for macular degeneration, the anorexic young woman put down because of the suffering she experienced from her eating disorder, the nursing home doctor who euthanized a patient he thought had lung cancer before the diagnosis was confirmed. A particular 2016 case stands out in its horror. Prior to becoming unable to care for herself, a woman with dementia wrote a note stating she never wanted to live in a nursing home. Despite that, she was institutionalized, where she became afraid and wandered the halls. Typical symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. Her doctor, without asking, decided the time had come for her life to end. The doctor drugged the woman's coffee so that she would sleep while being killed, a violation of euthanasia rules. Then things really went awry. According to the Daily Mail, while the doctor was attempting to lethally inject her, the woman woke up and fought to save her life. As it said in the Daily Mail, the paperwork showed that the only way the doctor could complete the injection was by getting family members to help restrain her. It also revealed that the patient said several times, "I don't want to die," in the days before she was put to death, and that the doctor had not spoken to her about what was planned because she did not want to cause unnecessary extra distress. Can you imagine a woman struggling against being killed, being held down by her own family? By any reasonable measure, that was murder. But a regional review committee inquiry exonerated the doctor because she had, as the committee said, she had acted in good faith. The Belgians have taken their euthanasia regime to even more radical extremes.